Imagine a gaping maw that could swallow you whole. Not just you, but any creature of any size. Imagine a creature capable of constant transformation and evolution, taking any traits it needs from its prey. It is indestructible, intelligent, unstoppable. The perfect organism. And would you believe me if I told you it was downright adorable? A little boy wanders through a toy store, a small wad of money in hand, searching for the perfect thing to play with. Desperate to help quell some of his summer vacation boredom, his parents gave him a little cash and brought him to the store to pick out a new distraction. But what will he choose? A superhero action figure? A toy car? Some brightly colored plastic bricks to build with? None of it seems quite right. The truth is, he doesn't really want a toy, so much as he wants someone to play with. But his parents don't get the summer off like he does, and they don't have the time to entertain him in between the seemingly endless meetings and phone calls. He's just about to give up and tell his parents that there isn't anything he wants, when he suddenly spots a friendly, plush face peering out from between a few remote control trucks. He reaches out his hand to touch the soft fabric, only for the toy's face to meet his hand halfway. Toddles off of the shelf on short little legs, bumping its head against the boy's hand like a cat asking for pets. The boy grants the toy's request, patting it gently on the head, and it emits a high-pitched sound like a little meow, crawling closer and pressing itself against his leg affectionately. The boy beams, scarcely able to believe his luck. This isn't a toy at all. It's a new friend. There isn't a price tag on the soft creature or a barcode that a cashier could scan. Is he supposed to pay for it? Anxious about the possibility of doing something wrong, but even more afraid that he won't get to bring his new friend home after all, he places the money on the shelf where the creature came from, then scoops it into his arms. Delighted to be held, it falls into a peaceful sleep, and by the time the boy rejoins his parents at the front of the store, it looks to them as if he bought himself an ordinary plush toy. It isn't the most adventurous pick by any means, but they haven't seen him this happy in a while, so they don't ask any further questions. That is, until it starts to move of its own free will. Immediately, the boy's screaming mother starts chasing the impossible creature with a broom. It gives a desperate "Meep" and tries to avoid her onslaught, but its four little legs can only carry it so far. It needs some kind of boost to escape, and luckily, it finds one, in the form of a dead cockroach lying underneath the kitchen table. The plush creature's thin mouth expands, swallowing the dead cockroach whole. Immediately, 2 extra legs, giving it a total of 6, grow out of the creature's flank. 6 legs. Yes, that's more like it. It scuttles away at great speed, chasing its way up the wall as the boy's mother screams in horror. But that won't dissuade the father. He's taken up his double-barreled shotgun and unloads 2 slugs into the creature. The force knocks it off the wall, making it tumble to the ground. But despite taking the brute force of a powerful shotgun, it somehow still lives. It skitters away at full speed as the father, loading 2 more slugs, gives chase. It escapes through the doggy door, the father and his screaming wife hot on its heels. Luckily for the creature, there's another boon just outside the house, a dead pigeon that had met its demise in an unfortunate collision with the living room window a few hours earlier. The creature doesn't waste any time. Its impossibly elastic mouth stretches open and swallows the pigeon whole, the decaying bird disappearing into the darkness. As soon as the creature's mouth closes, it starts to change again. Its extra legs disappear, and it begins to take on a more bird-like shape, with wings and tail feathers that help it take flight. The door swings open, and the creature swoops into the air. Not to be deterred or dishonored, the father levels his shotgun again and takes aim. Boom! The blast hits the now flying creature again, sending it spinning through the air with a high-pitched squeak. It doesn't understand why these people are being so mean to it, after it was allowed so warmly into their home not long ago. Despite being shot with a shotgun twice, it is still unharmed, just a little shocked. When it lands, it does so on the side of a wooded road to catch its breath. All that flying worked up a powerful hunger, and luckily for the creature, there's a nearly intact deer carcass laying on the grassy verge nearby. Not long before, it had been sent on an express trip to the afterlife by the grill of an SUV. Waste not, want not, the creature thinks. The creature's mouth expands and devours the deer, despite the deer being several times its own size. Once the less than fortunate fawn has been consumed, the creature sprouts 4 long, majestic legs and a little cotton tail, before galloping off into the woods. No, don't worry, you haven't completely lost your mind. You've just witnessed SCP-4966 in the wild. And if that story was a little too much for you, I regret to inform you that this case file gets far, far stranger from there. SCP-4966 is a quadrupedal stuffed animal constructed from gray fabric. It also just so happens to be alive. Any attempts to pierce this fabric and examine the creature's contents have failed. It appears to be essentially indestructible. After dissection failed, the Foundation attempted to examine the internal structures of SCP-4966's body using X-rays, but it seemed to show a complete lack of skeleton or musculature, or anything else that would allow the creature to move as it does. Aside from 2 black eyes and a woven mouth, SCP-4966 has no visible markings or orifices on its body. Its vocalizations resemble that of a kitten, and its disposition is highly social. If it does not receive socialization on a regular basis, the creature will become anxious and withdrawn. Just as cats are known for mirroring the behavior of the fellow felines and human owners, SCP-4966 will imitate the actions of other entities it spends time with. It does not appear to need food, water, or air, but will eat, drink, and breathe if in the presence of an entity doing the same. There is, however, one scenario in which SCP-4966 will eat regardless of the behavior of other entities in the area. When the creature is presented with the corpse of an organism, it will extend its mouth to an anomalous degree and consume the body whole. The creature's body will bulge and stretch around its meal, but the density of its plush skin remains the same throughout the process. There appears to be no size limit on the corpses it can consume, as the creature was once witnessed consuming an adult blue whale's body during one particularly ambitious test. Once SCP-4966 has completely enveloped a given corpse, its body will slowly return to its original size. During this transition phase, the creature will display changes to its morphology, consistent with the characteristics of its most recent meal. These alterations vary widely, but the existing facial features and gray coloration will always remain unchanged. This process goes on for approximately 4 hours, at which point the creature will regurgitate some manner of biological waste composed of various elements of the original organism. If this process is hard for you to wrap your head around, I can relate. Perplexed by this entity's physiology and the manner in which it feeds, I attempted to uncover the experiment log for SCP-4966. I was unable to access it in its entirety, but did get my hands on several excerpts that I found quite illuminating. They answered absolutely none of my initial questions, but were thoroughly entertaining to read just the same. I won't keep you in suspense. Allow me to elaborate. In one experiment, a deceased adult male timber rattlesnake was placed in front of SCP-4966. The creature quickly devoured it and began to change. Its torso extended 150 centimeters longer than it previously had, and its abdomen terminated in a visibly developed tail and rattle. After lengthening in this way, the creature used its new shape to snake around the limbs and bodies of attending researchers. It did not wrap tightly enough to restrict blood flow, but instead appeared to be interested in providing the researchers with hugs. The rattle was shaking at a near constant rate throughout this process, not as a warning of impending peril, but more in the manner that a dog might wag its tail when excited. When 4 hours had passed, SCP-4966 proceeded to regurgitate a mass of decomposing keratin and liquefied organic matter. During another test, SCP-4966 was fed an adult female lionfish at an advanced stage of decomposition. In spite of the fish's venomous spines, SCP-4966 suffered no adverse effects when consuming it. After swallowing its unappetizing meal, SCP-4966 developed a pair of pectoral fins, a rear fin, and a large dorsal fin that was constructed of several long spines. SCP-4966 struggled to move with these fins, primarily flopping along the ground like a fish out of water. A chemical analysis of the spines matched the composition of lionfish venom, and the researchers avoided touching the creature for the remainder of the test. When it was time to regurgitate, SCP-4966 spat up some broken spines and liquefied organic matter. With reptiles and fish taken care of, the research team decided to get a little bit wild and introduced SCP-4966 to some plant matter. Frankly, I'm glad to see it getting a well-balanced diet and eating some greens for once. Well, browns, really. It was presented with a pile of deceased sycamore maple leaves. SCP-4966 consumed one single leaf, then immediately regurgitated it. Not a fan of vegetables, I suppose. It spent the remainder of the test playing with the pile of leaves, climbing up onto its provided furniture, then diving into the leaves again and again, emitting high-pitched, gleeful vocalizations. During another test, a severely damaged female ostrich corpse was presented to SCP-4966. Still, the extent of the degradation did not seem to impact SCP-4966's anomalous ability, because upon consumption, the creature's legs extended approximately 1.3 meters, developing 2 large toes, and its head extended approximately 1.2 meters upward, forming a large, curved neck. A pair of featherless wings sprouted from the sides of SCP-4966's torso. The creature attempted to fly using these wings, but much like the ostrich that had imbued it with them in the first place, it was sadly flightless. Upon regurgitating several shattered portions of bone and a large amount of liquefied organic matter, it reverted to its usual form. During another experiment, SCP-4966 was presented with the head of a male adult eastern moose, taxidermied and well preserved. SCP-4966 quickly consumed this taxidermy, no doubt missing from some tackily decorated hunting lodge, and began to transform. It developed large antlers, approximately 1.4 meters across. Due to the size of these antlers relative to SCP-496's head and the rest of its body, its sense of balance and mobility were severely hindered, causing it to wobble with every step. Additionally, it developed large ears that, due to a lack of structural support, could not remain upright, and instead flopped down around the creature's head. I only wish that the experiment log had included a photo because, to be perfectly frank, the resulting effect sounds utterly adorable. Less adorable is what SCP-4966 regurgitated after the test, a large, compact mass of metal, wood pulp, and shattered bone. Curious to see how close an item needed to be to an actual corpse to be effective, the researchers provided SCP-4966 with a pair of genuine leather boots. This was, I assume, an attempt to see if SCP-4966 would recognize these as part of a deceased cow or not. The answer, it would appear, is not. SCP-4966 approached the boots curiously, lightly biting the toe of the left boot as if tasting it. Then it moved on to the right boot, gently biting the toe, then giving up on eating them. SCP-4966 knocked over the right boot, climbed inside of it, and promptly fell asleep. Soft snoring could be heard from within for the next hour. At this point in my research, I was prompted to enter some additional security credentials. Luckily, through methods I don't feel especially comfortable disclosing here, I was able to obtain these very credentials and continued my investigation. What secrets could a sentient plush toy, albeit an anomalous omnivorous one, have that would require this level of secrecy? I know that curiosity killed the cat, but I was banking on the probability that satisfaction would bring it back, as well as the fact that I am rather notably lacking in feline attributes. So I proceeded. It seems that after exhausting all other species, the research staff decided to provide SCP-4966 with a human corpse, that of D-01763 to be exact. When SCP-4966 consumed this body, there were no apparent physical alterations to the creature at all. However, it did begin to vocalize, speaking for the first time in recognizable, although slightly incoherent English. Blessed with the ability to communicate clearly for the first time, the entity made several complaints about its enclosure, specifically the low-quality material of its bedding. But then, it revealed something fascinating. When it consumes a deceased human, SCP-4966 is able to access the memories of that person. It also apparently gains the ability to speak at the level of a young child. This capacity for speech is lost when the organic matter of the meal is regurgitated, but the memories remain. A compelling enough discovery on its own, but what happened next was truly shocking. Shortly after this foray into human experimentation with SCP-4966, the Chaos Insurgency staged a raid on Site-17, during which they attempted to gain access to several anomalies, including SCP-4966. This raid proved unsuccessful, but its occurrence, and the discovery of a Chaos Insurgency document containing classified Foundation information on SCP-4966, raised several concerning questions. How did the Insurgency gain this information? Why were they so interested in SCP-4966? And how did they know where it was contained? Several corpses of Insurgency members were provided to SCP-4966 in an attempt to uncover the answers. Once it regained the ability to speak, Dr. Randall Bannock conducted an interview with SCP-4966. For the first 2 hours and 14 minutes of the interview, SCP-4966 was not helpful in the slightest. It focused its attention on a relentless demand for snacks, or as it calls them, Munchies. After giving the creature 7 biscuits, Dr. Bannock was beginning to lose his grip and begged it to cooperate. It responded with yet another complaint.
I want a better bed, too. The one you guys have is lumpy. Make a bed out of Munchies so I can eat it when I get hungry.
Dr. Bannock promised the creature another biscuit if it could explain how the insurgency knew its location.
The red shooty people? They found the room with my name on it.
Dr. Bannock sighed, then reworded his question to ask how the group knew its item number.
I was in the room, so the room had my name. They made lots of banging on the door and noisy noises. I was sleeping, but it was too loud and the bed was lumpy.
Dr. Bannock promised the creature that a new bed would be delivered the following day, then continued his line of questioning. How did the insurgency know where the building was? The creature refused to answer until it received an additional biscuit.
The pat people who visit me. They tell the wed people stuff through the head pods.
Understandably, Dr. Bannock required clarification on the identities of the, quote, pat people.
Lots of people give me pats. The white coat woman who gives me the toys is nice. I like her. She gave me the ball with the bell in it, and it makes a ringy noise. The orange person that gives me lots of pats, but his face keeps being different between pat times. He gives me pats, though, so it's a good orange. You give me munchies and smell like a cake, and that's a good munchie. Also, you said you were going to get me a good bed, but...
Dr. Bannock interrupted the creature here, redirecting it to the topic at hand. After bribing SCP-4966 with 2 more biscuits, it continued to try and explain.
I think they use the head squishies, like the one in the red guy I munched, and the one in the spiky stripey, but that one wasn't too good.
This only served to add more confusion, and Dr. Bannock asked for clarification. Did the creature mean they used their brains?
I don't know about squishy parts. I think the big part that looks like a watermelon is used to talk. I'm not an organ psychic.
At this point, rather than do what I would do and ask what on earth an organ psychic is, Dr. Bannock pressed for details on the so-called orange person that SCP-4966 ate.
The orange person was colder and was kinda too mushy. The red people had lots more stuff about shooty guns, but I don't like to hurt people, so I say no thank you, mister. The orange person had a lot more about like being stuck in a room, and I don't think they ever got to taste the crispy crunch of a munchie, which is sad.
Dr. Bannock acknowledged the sadness of life without the joys of a crispy crunch, then continued his line of questioning about the brain-based communication between D-Class and insurgency members.
1 second. I'm gonna do a real big think.
SCP-4966 sat in silence for several minutes, humming to itself in confusion.
I think I found something from the wed people, but it's a bit scrambly and they use some big words I don't know. They keep saying words about sonic chips, but they aren't eating any chips and I'm confused. Wait, I think the orange people had the sonic chips already. Maybe they forgot them at the store because they were saying stuff about not noticing the sonic chips. I want that munchy sonic chips like the orange person gets.
Eventually, after a lot of prodding and several tangents regarding the demand for additional munchies, SCP-4966 listed the identification numbers of 14 D-Class personnel. Autopsies of each of these personnel revealed a small device in the cerebellum capable of psionic transmissions. As a reward for its help in uncovering the cause of a concerning security breach, SCP-4966 was given a bag of Tostitos brand tortilla chips, which it promptly consumed with great enthusiasm. SCP-4966 is kept within a modified humanoid containment cell, sized appropriately for the free movement of a domestic cat or creature of similar size. The cell is furnished with several pieces of cushioned furniture and recreational objects such as climbing towers, soft plush toys, and small plastic objects such as toy dinosaurs are also placed throughout the room. In addition to its toys, SCP-4966 is to be given socialization on a tri-weekly basis by the on-site researchers. Any tests involving SCP-4966 must be approved by Dr. Bannock. Several members of personnel have expressed an interest in providing SCP-4966 with additional toys and recreational objects, but the Foundation has insisted that these be purchased using personal funds rather than tapping into the Foundation's budget. As far as I know, SCP-4966 lives a relatively peaceful life in the aftermath of its brush with the Chaos Insurgency. But it just goes to show that in the world of the SCP Foundation, nothing is ever as simple as it first appears. Even a soft, cuddly, squishy little plush toy can be the key to uncovering a web of secrets, conspiracy, and espionage. I'm just glad he got a nice snack after. The sun rises over the battlefield. The American flag flaps gently in the wind. The world is silent. Bang! The door slams open, and the boy runs out of the house, making plane noises with his mouth. The toy bomber in his hand arcs and soars, dipping and diving, as it makes its imaginary bombing run around the backyard, over the sandbox, swooping low through the thick grass, past the pond, under the swing set, and up and away into the sky, climbing higher and higher in the direction of the treehouse with its American flag flapping in the morning breeze. What a perfect day. The boy breathes in the air deeply and looks around. His shoulders slump. He's bored already. 2 seconds in the yard and he's already bored. What is there to do out here that he hasn't already done? He's played in the sand, he's swung on the swings, he's climbed up to the treehouse. He hears the car engine kicking into life somewhere out front. His dad's voice carries over to him on the breeze. "I'm running late for work, I'll see you later. If you find my bag anywhere, don't go looking inside of it, just tell me where it is when I get home. Love you, bye." The wheels crunch through the gravel driveway, and the engine sound slowly fades into the distance, leaving the boy alone in the backyard again, with nothing but the wind for company. Great. Now he's got to find something to do for the whole day. He throws the toy bomber to the ground in frustration. A wing snaps off and bounces away into the flower bed. Uh-oh. He'll need to fix that before Dad gets home. Super glue. That'll do the trick. There must be some inside. His dad is always fixing things. But the boy's mission is almost immediately sidetracked. As soon as he steps into the house, he spots his dad's bag right by the back door, where he always forgets to look. The boy looks at it curiously for a moment. He wonders what's in there that his dad told him not to look at. He'll just have a little peek, not a proper look. He won't even open the bag all the way, just a little look inside. If anyone asks, he'll say he was looking for superglue. Wait, what's that? It can't be. A little pot with a red lid and big cartoonish letters on the side. Play-Doh? What's his dad doing with a pot of Play-Doh in his bag? He thought his dad had a really grown-up job. That's what his mom always says. His dad has a very secret grown-up job, very important, very secret. Is that really what he does at work all day, play with Play-Doh? The boy is far too grown up for Play-Doh. He hasn't played with it for years because it's for babies. No way is he going to play with it now. Nope, he's a big boy who plays with real toys. But still, a little look won't hurt. He'll take it out, squeeze it in his hands a bit, remember how babyish it is, and put it back. He definitely isn't going to play with it. The boy pops the red lid off and peers inside. Yep, just as he thought. Boring. Just a lump of red putty, sitting there being all boring. But as the boy tips the pot out into his hand, it feels a bit weird. It moves a little in his palm. Is there an insect inside it or something? It feels like a pair of little legs. He rolls the lump over into his other hand and peers at it. Yes, a pair of legs sticking out from the red ball. Only they're not insect legs at all. They're tiny, about the size of insect legs, but there are only 2 of them. They're totally red, matching the color of the Play-Doh, and seem to have a tiny pair of boots on the ends of them. The legs wiggle around helplessly, sticking up into the air, until all of a sudden, a hand appears sticking up out of the clay. It looks like a tiny person has somehow been buried in the Play-Doh upside down. The hand gets a good grip on the red ball and pushes and pulls at it, steadily freeing the rest of its body until suddenly, a fully formed tiny man pops out of the surface. Roughly the size of the boy's fingernail, the little red man stands up straight and takes in his surroundings. Not only is the tiny person wearing boots, he's also got a backpack and a helmet on his miniature head, all made of Play-Doh. In fact, this tiny person looks just like one of those little green army man toys that his dad had when he was little. The little soldier looks up and sees the boy staring down at him, jumping back in fright. The boy laughs. He guesses he must look pretty scary to someone so small. He smiles at the little army man. The little army man very slowly lowers himself down to his knees, reaching down to the Play-Doh floor he's standing on. His little red hand seems to be feeling around for something in the putty. In fascination, the boy stares closely as the Play-Doh under the soldier's hand morphs into the shape of... what is that? A gun. The soldier lifts the tiny red rifle to his shoulder and points it straight at the boy's eye. He fires, and to the boy's surprise, something comes out. A stream of teeny tiny Play-Doh bullets pepper his eyeball. The boy throws the Play-Doh ball as hard as he can and blinks hard. A tiny scream goes with it. The bullets didn't really hurt that much, but his eye is a little watery now. The tiny soldier has a real working tiny assault rifle. He's starting to understand why his dad is still playing with Play-Doh. Where did that Play-Doh go? He must have thrown it into the backyard. The boy runs outside and looks around. There it is, just next to the sandbox. He creeps up to the ball cautiously, trying to see if the little soldier is still there. Wait, hang on. There he is. No, there he is. Is that another one? He kneels and peers at the small crowd gathering around the ball. He can't quite believe what he's seeing. Dozens of little men are milling around the red ball, with more marching out of it in formation every few seconds. Little red Play-Doh tents are being erected in a perimeter around the ball. A couple of tiny soldiers chop down a twig with tiny red axes and start a campfire. A mini red jeep weaves its way through the grass, and a general hops out, with a cowering officer by his side. The tiny general barks tiny orders. It's difficult to hear what the man is saying, but it sounds like he's speaking English, only really high-pitched. He points to a group of soldiers who immediately rush over to the ball of Play-Doh and pull a ladder out of it. They rest the ladder against the edge of the sandbox, and a couple of them hurry their way to the top. Climbing up onto the wooden board, the pair of them split up, rifles in hand, checking the area is clear. The general is the next up the ladder. He surveys the yard with a battle-worn wariness, eyes coming to rest on the treehouse. He pulls out his binoculars and takes a good hard look at it, studying every inch of the tree before spotting the flagpole rising from the top. Lowering the binoculars with evident satisfaction, the general points a tiny hand at the enormous tree and cries out an order at the top of his little voice. A high pitch rises from the troops on the ground. They pump fists and slap backs. The army has grown already. As the boy looks back down at the platoon gathering in the grass, he sees a dozen more tents have sprung up. A group of soldiers stand in formation around the ball of Play-Doh, keeping watch in every direction. And there, a soldier sits on an acorn crying. Helmet in his hands, he weeps openly. There is a red cross on the tent next to him. That must be the medical tent. The boy crouches down on all fours and peers inside the tent. There, on the tiny red bed, surrounded by tiny red nurses, lies a soldier. His legs are bent out of shape, and he's crying out in pain. A doctor approaches and gives him the bad news before readying the saw. The boy sits back up. He can't watch. A high-pitched cry echoes from the tent, loud enough to dampen the commotion around the rest of the camp. The boy recognizes that scream. It's the same scream he heard when he threw the Play-Doh out of the door. That first brave soldier, defending his brothers in arms from the giant. What had the boy done? The soldier outside the medical tent picks up the phone and informs the tiny soldier's tiny family what had happened. He had lost both his legs, but not his life. He was a hero. The battalion is mobilizing. No time to mourn. Snipers climb the ladder onto the edge of the sandbox and set up nests all along the wooden beam as trucks rumble through the thick grass below. On the other side of the sandbox wall, a desert platoon makes its way through the scorching heat. Soldiers sit atop tanks, shaking the last remaining drops of doughy water from their red bottles and wiping sweat from their brows. All of them heading in the direction of the treehouse. The boy stands up, surrounded by tiny soldiers. He has to be careful where he steps now as they fill the grass around him. A couple of tanks rumble between his feet, flattening the blades of grass as if they were as weak as, well, blades of grass. All of the soldiers, all of the equipment and vehicles, everything is coming from the little ball of red Play-Doh. And little is the right word for it. With every new unit deployed to the front line, the ball shrinks slightly. It's getting smaller and smaller by the minute. They're going to need reinforcements. The boy rushes into the house and returns in just a few seconds, arms laden with Play-Doh. He's got every pot of it from when he was little. He pops them all open, one after the other, and throws them onto the ground in the midst of the camp. The only slight issue is that all the Play-Doh is that gross brown color that it goes when you mix all the colors together. That won't matter, will it? Gunfire breaks out almost immediately below him. The boy jumps back in surprise, stepping on a communications mast by accident. Tiny brown soldiers rush out of the Play-Doh balls all around the camp, diving into cover and opening fire on the red soldiers. It's a massacre. Red soldiers taking a rest from the front line, calling their loved ones, getting ready to go home on leave, lying injured in beds. All of them are gunned down. Most don't even have a chance to grab their rifles. One brave red soldier sprints to the communications mast and tries to radio the rest of the battalion, telling them what's happened, but the mast is destroyed. A stray bullet catches him in the side of his head, and he crumbles to the ground, just a lifeless blob of Play-Doh. The boy watches in horror as a couple of brown soldiers pick up the body and toss it into the nearest ball of brown Play-Doh. A dedicated team of them mix the body in with the rest of the dough until it's that same brown color. From the blob emerges a new brown soldier. The small red streak running across his heart is the only sign that he'd ever been a red at all. The soldier quickly disappears amongst the mass of helmets and boots, trampling any trace of the Red Army. The whole yard erupts in tiny warfare. The red snipers lining the walls of the sandbox are picked off one after the other. The desert platoon are ambushed by landmines and quickly surrounded, hiding in broken down tanks as plumes of sand are thrown up all around them. Before long, the brown troops have them completely surrounded. One last soldier bursts out from the hatch in his tank, holding grenades in each hand. The bullet catches him in the head before he can even finish his war cry. The grenades explode harmlessly, nowhere near the brown troops. The red convoy, on its way to the tree, stands the best chance of survival. The boy follows them with fascination, watching as the brown army fight their way through the red line from the back, splitting it through the middle as their superior firepower makes short work of the transport and supply trucks. Some red soldiers dive away into the thick grass, climbing up dandelions and weeds in a desperate attempt to escape. Few succeed, as the bodies fall back into the mud like raindrops. A tiny screaming noise fills the yard. The boy turns around just in time to jump out of the way of the brown fighter jets. 5 of them streak through the air, almost at his head height. Missiles fire out of the bottom of each jet, one after the other, blowing apart what little remains of the red convoy. The gunfire dies down within the hour. Skirmishes break out across the yard as brown patrols pick off the stragglers they find from the Red Army hiding in ants' nests, under fallen leaves, and huddling around broken-down vehicles. The boy watches as several high-ranking officers gather in the brown base to oversee the absorption of the last of the red ball of Play-Doh. They mold themselves a big meeting table with a brown map of the yard and plot out their strategy for taking the treehouse for themselves, moving around even tinier little model units across the surface of it with sticks. The plan quickly comes together before the boy's eyes and under his feet. A series of mortars and surface-to-air missiles are deployed along the wall of the sandbox. The Air Force takes over the original brown base, chopping down blades of grass and laying out Play-Doh runways flanked with brown hangars. A ring of military units surround the base of the treehouse, strategizing about how best to ascend the colossal structure and reach the flagpole. In the pond, an aircraft carrier splashes into the water, marking the arrival of the Navy. The ship is soon flanked by a pair of destroyers armed with anti-aircraft missiles. The boy is about to go over and peer into the water to try and spot a nuclear submarine when he comes across a sight for sore eyes. Red soldiers, not much more than a single squadron, hunkered down around the base of the swing set. They've covered themselves in dirt and little clumps of moss to camouflage. They must be the forwardmost scout squadron, just far enough away from that original convoy to escape the slaughter. But what are they doing? The units are all gathered around a pile of leaves. There's something underneath. What is it? It looks like plastic. Of course, it's his toy bomber with the broken wing. Trying not to draw the attention of the brown army, the boy drops to the ground next to the red units, doing his best to hide in the grass. The red soldiers are arguing amongst themselves. The general is there. He's survived, but barely, slumped against a blade of grass. The scouts' high-pitched arguing is a little too quiet for the boy to make out, but it's pretty clear what's going on. They need to get the toy plane working, but it'll be hopeless without the other wing. He lifts his head and looks around the yard. There it is, in the flower bed, but it's surrounded by brown troops. How could the red soldiers possibly fight their way to it and get back unharmed? Oh, wait. The boy just gets up, walks over to the flower bed, and picks up the wing. In about 3 seconds, he completes an insurmountable effort for those little soldiers. Kneeling next to them, he offers the missing wing. The scouts all stand back warily. It's the general who climbs to his feet and walks over to the boy. He looks at the plastic wing, looks up at the giant towering over him, and raises his arm in a salute. The others follow suit quickly and get to work repairing the toy plane. Brown soldiers notice the commotion and start to close in on them. They don't have much time. The boy stamps out a runway for the soldiers in the grass. The plane is almost ready to go, but is missing one vital piece of the propeller. Only there's a bigger problem. They're out of red Play-Doh. A brown soldier breaks through the thick grass and rushes towards the squadron, his assault rifle peppering the side of the plane with doughy bullets. The scouts all dive into the vehicle and kick the engine into gear. Little red gears and pistons whir into life beneath the plastic, but the plane just isn't moving without the propeller. What can they do? The brown soldier stops in his tracks, staring at the plane. The boy peers at him closer. There's a red streak across his heart. Conflict contorts the tiny soldier's face. The door to the plane opens, and out steps the general. The two soldiers face each other on the runway, the red scouts desperately calling the general to get back in. None of them move. The brown soldier raises his rifle and shoots the general in the head. The older man crumples to the ground. Inside the plane, the scouts start to panic. They don't have their guns with them. The brown army is bearing down on them from all sides. What can they do? The brown soldier with the streak across his heart walks slowly over to the general's body, stoops down, and picks him up. He carries the body around to the front of the plane and, without a word, starts using the Play-Doh to build them a propeller. Brown soldiers burst through the grass, swarming the runway. They need to leave, now or never.
The brown soldier places the propeller onto the plane and steps aside as the vehicle roars off along the runway. He salutes the ascending plane as one of his brown compatriots puts a bullet in his chest, right through his red heart. But the plane is already away, lifting off into the sky. The toy bomber dodges and weaves its way between the whizzing bullets. It banks hard, pulling the nose around inch by inch to face the treehouse. The pilot guns it, pulling the tiny stick back sharply. It seems to take an age for the bomber to climb. The boy glances behind him just in time to see the Brown Navy launch their missiles, 6 of them, all making a beeline for the bomber. Or so it seems. At the last moment, he sticks a hand out and slaps the missiles out of the air. A couple of them explode, leaving streaks of brown Play-Doh on his hand. The others spiral to the ground, where tiny soldiers dive for cover. The Brown Air Force scrambles, but it's too late. As the jets shoot across the yard, the bomber has already reached its destination. The scouts jump out, deploying red Play-Doh parachutes as they circle their way down onto the flagpole. A jet catches up to the bomber and blows it out of the sky. The scouts don't have time to mourn their lost pilot, or any of their dead for that matter. Quick as they can, they cut the American flag free. As it flutters and floats down to the grass, the squadron unfurls its replacement, a red rectangle of Play-Doh, barely a couple of inches across. One of them pulls a bugle from his pack and plays the highest pitch version of The Last Post you could ever hear. The whole battlefield falls silent to listen. The boy places a hand over his heart just as the first drop of rain hits his shoulder. From somewhere inside, his mom's voice calls, "It's about to start raining. Come inside before you catch a cold. I'm making cocoa." The boy grins and runs into the house. Outside, the rain pours, and all trace of the war washes away into red and brown streaks in the dirt. And with that, you'd be forgiven for thinking that SCP-705 had never even been in that young boy's backyard. Most adults would just dismiss the boy's afternoon entertainment as a figment of a child's imagination, but most adults have not encountered SCP-705, otherwise known as militarized Play-Doh. The results of a redacted megacorporation's research into creating a self-molding product. The specific mechanics of how this militarized Play-Doh was created are hazy, to say the least. What is known is that the small red blob of what appears to be the popular children's sculpting toy exhibits aggressive militaristic tendencies. As soon as the 5-ounce pot is opened, SCP-705 activates, forming itself into miniature Play-Doh soldiers. Each unit comes dressed in detailed and accurate military fatigues, carrying miniaturized weaponry and equipment, all of which function identically to their real-life counterparts, aside from one small detail. Everything is made entirely from Play-Doh. When active, SCP-705 can divide into hundreds of infantrymen, each of which seems to have some level of personal autonomy. As of yet, no hive mind mentality has been observed between the soldiers. They all communicate as their real-life military equivalents would, through barking orders, strategizing, and working together. Upon activation, each instance of SCP-705 is highly territorial, seeking to take immediate control of the nearest location or object that seems to be of strategic importance. This could be anything from a coffee machine to a treehouse. What appear to be innocuous household objects to us pose an incredible tactical advantage to the tiny soldiers, many of whom are willing to sacrifice their lives to take control. The longer this militarized Play-Doh is allowed to roam free, the more advanced the military unit becomes. Leadership figures emerge, battle plans grow more and more advanced, and technology improves. While the Play-Doh may initially take the form of a handful of infantry units, if left to their own devices, these units will soon be riding on the backs of tanks, firing miniguns through the doors of attack helicopters, or even developing rudimentary navies and air forces. And of course, you have seen what happens when SCP-705 comes into contact with a regular pot of Play-Doh. The otherwise harmless putty will take on the same characteristics as this militarized Play-Doh. If the two groups of soldiers are the same color, they will form an alliance. If they are different colors, well, that's where the fun begins. Containing SCP-705 is relatively straightforward. Simply gathering all of the Play-Doh together and putting it back into its 5-ounce pot with the lid closed will neutralize the tiny army entirely. This, coupled with how harmless the tiny, doughy bullets are, means that SCP-705 requires little security. It is housed in Sector 2 safe SCP containment with the lid closed. The only accidental outbreak that has occurred since its containment has been in the break room, when a researcher accidentally left the lid open while they went to the bathroom. When the researcher returned, all they needed to do to rescue their coffee from the clutches of a crazed Play-Doh general was brush a few soldiers off the counter. This is a day SCP-705 still talks about often, with deep fear and reverence. It's a quiet morning in Lego City, until the robbery begins. clients of LEGO City's First National LEGO Bank barely notice at first as men in dark suits with plastic black masks covering their faces slink into the room from every conceivable entrance and exit. When these same 10 sinister LEGO strangers all pull out guns, everyone pays close attention.
"This is a robbery,"
their leader says while firing his gun into the air.
"We don't want any heroes. If you try to disrupt our operation, we'll blow you into bricks."
The patrons hit the ground, cowering for dear life, as 5 of the masked robbers approach the tellers with open bags, and the other 5 work crowd control, pointing their weapons at the cowering civilians. These men are hardened LEGO criminals. If something goes south, they won't hesitate to start blasting.
"Empty your vaults, lady," the leader says to one of the tellers. "We ain't messing around. We'll ice everyone in here."
But the teller doesn't follow his orders. Instead, she reaches under her desk and presses a tiny red button hidden from sight. Suddenly, the room erupts in red flashes and alarms as the bank security system activates. Robbers and hostages alike feel themselves beginning to panic, but the leader, he stays cool and still. Less than 10 seconds pass before the alarm stops. You could hear a pin drop in the room. Locks deactivate and shutters roll back up. The teller is confused and horrified. What happened? Little does she know, in a van parked outside, an 11th member of the LEGO robbery team is working on a sophisticated computer setup. He's hacked into the bank security system, and he's been able to both shut down the alarm system and intercept the message that goes out to the local police precinct. The plan is unfolding perfectly.
"Nice try,"
the leader says, and shoots the LEGO teller dead. Everyone in the room, including the other LEGO robbers, gasp. Nobody is prepared for things to get this ugly this quickly.
"Anyone feel like helping me out here?" the leader says. "Or am I going to need to start wasting more tellers?"
The surviving tellers read the message loud and clear. They open up the vaults and begin wheeling out stacks of LEGO cash, which the robbers begin stuffing into containers and duffel bags. In total, they steal over 2 million LEGO dollars. Each member of the team is going to get a hefty payout. With the mission completed, there's no sense in hanging around. They need to hop into their LEGO getaway cars and be out of there before the LEGO cops show up. But by the time they're leaving the bank, it's already too late. LEGO cop cars are tearing down the street towards their parked getaway vehicles. It doesn't make sense. Their operation was perfectly planned, military in its precision. The whole thing had been over in less than 3 minutes. How are the cops on them already? But none of them have time to think. The cop cars screech to a halt, and armed officers start climbing out, training their guns on the gobsmacked team of LEGO robbers standing in front of the bank.
"Freeze! Put down the weapons in the bags, or we'll be forced to take action!"
A LEGO cop screams over a LEGO megaphone. The only reply they get is gunfire. The leader levels his LEGO gun and starts blasting, taking out 2 cops and forcing the rest to scramble for cover behind their vehicles. Taking advantage of the moment of opportunity, the robbers scatter like cockroaches under a newly lifted rock. Most make it to their cars, but in the confusion, the LEGO police are able to return fire. One of the robbers, the tallest but slowest of the hardened criminal team, goes down in a hail of bullets. Another one of the robbers, who'd been his friend, screams in rage and turns his gun on the police, firing like a madman, not even caring if he hits his target. A conveniently placed police sniper in the building across from them wings him with an expert shoulder shot that drops him to the ground, alive but too injured to escape. He's nothing but dead weight now. The remaining 8 robbers pile into 3 LEGO getaway vehicles, 2 classic cars manned by getaway drivers, and the van where the team's elite LEGO hacker had been doing his high-tech work. Now, their job is a lot more simple. Get out of here without getting caught or killed. Immediately, the chase spills out onto the streets. They'd planned for this possibility. After completing the job, they'd each head to 3 different pre-designated safe zones, so if one was followed, they wouldn't implicate the others. The plan is complicated by seemingly having every single one of the city's cops on their tail now. Contact between the 3 vehicles immediately breaks down. The leader of the robbers is in the fastest of the getaway cars, with 3 others, the driver, the rookie, and the old-timer. Behind them, scores of LEGO police cars surge through the streets. Armed officers hang out of the passenger doors, opening fire on their escape vehicle, hoping to hit them or at least pop the tires.
"You want to play rough, huh?" the leader says to his panicking fellow criminals. "We'll show them how to play rough."
The leader and the old-timer grab a pair of LEGO submachine guns that are lying across the floor of the car. They lock and load before leaning out of the car windows to return fire. If they're going to go down today, it's going to be in a blaze of glory, not bruised and humiliated in a holding cell.
"You'll never take us alive, coppers!"
the old-timer barks as he and the leader open fire on their pursuers. It's a parabolic hellstorm, skittering bullets across the hoods of the police cars behind them. The windshields of even Lego police cars are reinforced to take this kind of punishment, but not for long. Soon enough, the surge of cars is buckling under the weight of fire from the leader and the old-timer. Cars are crashing into each other and piling up as the criminals take off. What should have been a simple robbery is quickly spiraling into a nightmare for all involved. The death toll is already in the double digits, and the chase goes on, with frequent gunfire exchanged between the Lego robbers and their Lego boys in blue pursuers. Above all this, above the chase, above the gunfire, above the robbery, two almost godlike giants stare down on the whole chaotic display. These godlike giants are, in fact, a pair of young boys aged 8 and 9. Less than an hour ago, these boys were just bored kids who'd run out of games to play on their Xbox. They had decided to go a little retro and switch up the Minecraft for a classic box of Lego. One of the two young boys remarked,
"I think my dad has a big red box of Lego in his office. He probably won't mind if we use it."
Of course, what the boy didn't know was that his father wasn't, contrary to his own belief, an accountant who worked in the city. He was actually a mid-level researcher working with the SCP Foundation, and quite the workaholic at that. He had a tendency to bring his work home with him, metaphorically, and in the case of some safe-class SCPs, when given the proper clearances, literally. One such SCP was SCP-387, the Living Lego, a toy that genuinely has a mind of its own. While completely inert and seemingly normal inside their red box, when removed and even partially constructed, the Lego comes to life and begins playing out its roles, from planes to tanks to hospitals to war zones. And these Lego creations are extremely committed to their parts. After finding the box, the young boys did what all children do when they happen upon a box full of Lego. They started building. And thanks to their vast juvenile imaginations, it didn't take long for them to construct an impressive Lego city in the living room. But a standard city full of Lego running smoothly is no fun. The boys needed to introduce a little extra excitement to the proceedings, like, say, a team of bank robbers. The one thing the two young boys don't expect is for the bank robbers, when introduced to the city, to start independently planning and executing a heist on the city's biggest bank. Still, there are worse ways to kill a rainy Sunday. Back on the ground of the Lego City, the other getaway vehicles are running into trouble. The other car had initially managed to pull ahead from the police, but while trying to cross a bridge, it runs into an unexpected roadblock. Literally, the Lego police have built a roadblock on the other side of the bridge, and now it's too late to reverse.
Open fire!
An enraged Lego police captain yells to his assembled squadron behind the barricades, and they raise the guns, and do so. Lego bullets pepper the getaway car. They can't drive through the barricade. All they can do is make a sharp left turn and hope to avoid the onslaught. Instead, they smash through the Lego barricade and tumble off the bridge. The car sails into the freezing Lego River, where the sudden cold paralyzes the robbers and the getaway driver inside. They go into shock and drown moments later. Across the Lego City, the van containing the hacker, the getaway driver, and another robber had somehow blended in with the traffic and has managed to escape the relentless police chase. Everyone inside the van breathes a sigh of relief, knowing they've already done better than most of their fellow criminals tonight. If they manage to make it through, there will be much to celebrate. For them, the next stage of the mission is clear. They need to make their way to a warehouse in the industrial district, their designated drop-off area, where they could hide their stolen money and disappear like leaves in the wind. They've already been through the hard parts, the planning, the robbery itself, the shootout, and car chase with the police. They're out of the woods now. Or so they thought. When they arrive at the warehouse and drive inside, parking their van, they immediately realize that something is off. But by now, it's too late to do anything about it. They suddenly hear footsteps and the screech of tires as heavy police tactical vehicles squeal into the warehouse all around them, boxing them in. Lego SWAT team operatives climb out of each vehicle and train their weapons on the trapped van. One of them yells, "We have you surrounded! There's no way out! Drop your weapons and surrender if you want to walk out of here alive!" And so, with no other options, this is exactly what they do. When they exit the vehicle with their hands behind their heads, the Lego SWAT team tackles them and claps cuffs around their wrists. They'll likely be spending the rest of their lives in jail for this fiasco, but at least they get to live. Across the city, only 4 members of the robbery team remain alive and free. The leader, the old-timer, the rookie, and the remaining getaway driver, all of whom narrowly managed to escape the extensive police detail following them. It had been a mix of skill and blind luck. The leader knows that one thing about this whole situation has nothing to do with luck. With all the planning they'd been doing and the disabling of the bank's security system, how had the police been on them so fast? There's only one logical answer. They'd been set up. One member of the team was secretly working with the Lego City police, and they'd sold the rest of them down the river. The leader doesn't know who specifically ruined this entire operation like that, but he intends to find out, and when he does, he's going to make them pay dearly for their betrayal. But for now, he stays quiet. He doesn't want to show all his cards before they made their way to the safe house, if it was even safe anymore. Still, they'll deal with that problem when they get to it. After a tense 10 minutes of silent driving, they reach the planned rendezvous point, another warehouse in the city docks, built against the section of blue carpet that the young boys who made this world intended to represent the ocean. Here, they'd wait for a speedboat chartered by their employers to pick them up and their ill-gotten gains. If they survive that long. The getaway driver parks the car out of view in the abandoned oceanside warehouse, and the criminals inside pile out, breathing carefully and stretching their little Lego legs. There's tension in the air, and of course, it's the leader who breaks the silence.
"Someone here hasn't been entirely honest with us,"
he says, taking out his Lego handgun.
"There's no way the cops could get on us that quickly if they hadn't been given some kind of tip."
Another grim silence falls over the room. The old-timer, the rookie, and the getaway driver share a suspicious glance. Who among them could be the imposter? The daring escape they'd managed to perform no longer gives them comfort. The millions of dollars in the trunk of their little Lego car may still be forfeit if one of the people in this warehouse is a police informant. The silence is once again broken by the leader, who raises his weapon and shoots the getaway driver dead. The rookie and the old-timer are horrified by the seemingly callous and random display of violence.
"What's wrong with you?"
The old-timer barks. The rookie chimes in with,
What made you think he was the mole?
The leader just laughs, his weapon still raised, its barrel drifting back and forth between the old-timer and the rookie. His indifference to violence frightens them. He seems unpredictable and dangerous.
"No reason," the leader says. "He'd already done his job. We don't need a getaway driver anymore. And getting rid of him narrows down my options. Which one of you squealed on us?"
The rookie pulls out his own gun and aims it at the leader. The old-timer follows suit, not wanting to be left out. They now have a full-on Mexican standoff on their hands. Only the leader seems unfazed. The rookie says,
If what you say about there being a squealer is true, how'd you know it'd be one of us, not someone from the other teams?
The leader shrugs.
"I can't know for sure, but I'm not going to take any chances."
He levels the gun at the rookie and prepares to fire, when suddenly a nearby window shatters. It's the police. Their little internal dispute would have to wait if they wanted to keep a single Lego cent of the money they'd stolen. Heavily armed Lego police officers bust open the door with a battering ram, while others climb through the windows. It's another classic ambush. The leader and the old-timer turn their guns towards the invading Lego cops and start firing wildly, shooting some and scaring away others as they run towards the car. They can't escape here without the money. If they don't bring the money, then all this chaos was for nothing. The leader runs across the warehouse, narrowly dodging the hail of Lego bullets firing all around him, and skids to a stop behind the getaway car. Even with gunshots ringing out from every direction, the leader keeps his cool and reaches into the car. He manages to find the largest duffel bag and slings it over his shoulder. Even if he doesn't get all of the money, he can run away with most of it when that chartered speedboat arrives. Nobody involved in this even notices when the roof lifts entirely off of the warehouse. The two huge young boys stare in from above, curious about where the story is heading down below. They're here just in time to see the tense shootout continue as the desperate leader pops out from his cover and returns fire against the advancing line of police. The old-timer tries his best to hold his own, holding a gun in each hand and firing wildly, but his recklessness soon catches up with him. Outnumbered, the cops with Lego shotguns and assault rifles unload on him, leaving him every bit as dead as the getaway driver. Ducking away to avoid the same fate, the leader notices something. The rookie is nowhere to be seen. Not dead, just gone. He knew it. Of course the rookie had been the mole all along. He should never have trusted the little creep. It had been a perfect plan, and he'd ruined everything. Over the din of gunfire, the leader hears something else. A boat motor. It's the chartered speedboat, his ticket out of this nightmare of bullets and broken promises. He might win after all. He turns and sees the speedboat entering the submerged part of the warehouse, just out of view of the police strike force. It would be a risky move, but he knows he can make it. He doesn't have any choice. Throwing caution to the wind, the leader turns and runs towards the boat, dodging every bullet that the police fire at him. He's doing it. He's doing it. He jumps into the boat, and the boat takes off, speeding away from the warehouse. He laughs in crazed relief, still lugging the duffel bag full of money off his aching shoulder. He's out. He's home free. Until a giant hand from above descends and grabs his Lego boat. He's lifted up and thrown back into the red box he was originally taken from, while the two young boys start taking apart the rest of the Lego city and tidying it back into the box too.
My dad'll be home soon, one of the young boys says. We better clean up before he's back.
The girl sighs and slumps in her seat, kicking at the back of the bucket seat in front of her. Her mother, sitting in the car's front passenger side seat, doesn't even notice. She's too busy taking photographs out the window and chattering with her husband, who's driving the car. That's all they've been doing all day, and the girl is sick to death of it. Her parents dragged her on this stupid vacation trip, and now she's got to waste her whole summer away from her friends. She stares out the window and watches the pastoral countryside slide past. The quaint little villages and rolling hillsides really excite her parents, but she could not care less. Mom and Dad planned this family vacation across Europe for months, but she would much rather have gone someplace interesting instead. There are only so many boring old castles and stupid cathedrals that you can look at before you just lose your mind. The girl sighs and crosses her arms across her chest in silent resignation.
Guess we're just gonna look at more dumb buildings, she mutters. Honey, can you stop that? Your father worked really hard to put this trip together, and the least you could do is pretend to have a good time, says her mother, momentarily lowering her camera to berate her ungrateful daughter.
Huh?
It's the first time that her mother has acknowledged her all day. I think you're really gonna like today's itinerary, says her father, grinning as if he's got a delicious secret that he can't wait to share. We know it's been hard for you spending your whole summer away from home, so today we're gonna do something just for you.
Uh-huh,
says the girl.
Sure, Dad.
She rolls her eyes and pulls out a cell phone. At least she can still get internet access out here. Desperate for something to distract her from the monotony of this car trip, she quickly scrolls through her feed and reads all the notes that her friends back home are posting. She frowns. Her classmates are all posting about the latest blockbuster film in the girl's favorite media franchise, Vampire Boyfriend. She grits her teeth. She likes to consider herself a Vampire Boyfriend superfan. She's a well-known poster in the Vampire Boyfriend online community, famous for her fanfiction, as well as her own original character, Vampire Girlfriend. In fact, her writing is somewhat controversial. A lot of Vampire Boyfriend purists have accused her character Vampire Girlfriend of being a Mary Sue, and they object to her stories where a Vampire Boyfriend meets and falls madly in love with her, to the point that he forgets his canon lover from the film series, Vampire Wife. She's annoyed to see that her friends got to see the new Vampire Boyfriend movie on opening night, while she's stuck out here on this stupid family vacation. The movie won't premiere in Europe for another few months, and there's no way she's going to be able to avoid spoilers for that long. Everything about this situation seems tailor-made to irritate her, and the excited giggles of her parents in the front of the car as they exchange knowing glances are only annoying her more. Trust me, you're gonna love this, says her father again. He peers at an unfolded road map in his lap, mutters something under his breath, and turns the car off the main highway and onto a narrow gravel road. The girl grits her teeth as the car rattles over the uneven ground so hard that it nearly jostles her cell phone from her grasp. She tries to distract herself by typing some notes to herself, plot points for the latest Vampire Boyfriend fanfiction that she's working on. In her new story, Vampire Girlfriend is going to be kidnapped by werewolves, leading Vampire Boyfriend to have an existential crisis as he struggles to find meaning in a world without his beloved. She makes a note that Vampire Girlfriend should look, dress, and talk just like her. After all, she imagines, wouldn't she be the perfect match for Vampire Boyfriend? She pauses, a momentary dreamy expression on her face, as she imagines how much better a weekend together with Vampire Boyfriend would be compared to this boring car trip. This can't be right, mumbles her father, scanning the horizon. But the directions said. Suddenly he brightens up. Oh, there it is. Playland. The girl cranes her neck to see that the car is fast approaching what appears to be a little carnival at the end of the road. She rolls her eyes. Oh, great. Of course her parents would take her here. First, they bore her with endless visits to museums and historical sites, and now, when they want to make it all up to her, they take her to a carnival for babies. She's not a kid anymore, but her parents still think that this sort of goofy nonsense should excite her. I know you've been bored going to all the historical sites with us, Honey Pumpkin, says her father as he pulls the car into a parking spot and applies the brake. That's why I asked the hotel concierge if there was anything good around here for kids. And wouldn't you know it, the next morning, what did I find shoved under our door? 3 free tickets. He holds up the tickets as if they were a trophy he'd won. The girl's mother nods approvingly. Now that's good service. I hope you left him a big tip. The girl groans. You can't be serious, Dad. A carnival? What, do you expect me to ride on the teacups or something? I'm 15. I'm not a dumb baby anymore. Language, young lady, admonishes her mother as she unbuckles her seatbelt. Your father worked really hard to find this place just for you. The least you could do is show a little gratitude for once. Oh, you think you're too old now, says her father. But I bet once we see some of these rides, boy, I'll bet you feel just like a kid again. He inhales deeply. Even inside the car, the unmistakable fair smells of funnel cake and corn dogs are in the air. You smell that? It smells like fun. Sure, fun. The girl pockets her cell phone. The family exits the car and walks toward the Playland gate, where they're greeted by a costumed employee. Welcome to Playland, announces the employee in a chipper voice. Your favorite amusement park. When you're at Playland, you'll find that the worries of the day melt away, and it's time for play. Oh, you speak English, says the father. He turns to the mother. See, now that's service. He hands over the complimentary tickets. The employee takes them with a smile and a flourish, and then ushers the family through the gate. The girl, however, can't stop staring at the gatekeeper. If she didn't know any better, she would think that he was dressed like Vampire Boyfriend. But that doesn't make any sense. It must just be a coincidence. But once they enter the park, she sees that all the employees are dressed like Vampire Boyfriend. The guy standing behind the counter of the ring toss booth, the guy manning the balloon station. The uniform for this park looks like the outfit that she imagined Vampire Boyfriend would be wearing in her first fanfiction story. Wait, says the girl, staring up at the bundle of helium balloons floating above the balloon vendor. Each balloon bears the name Vampire Boyfriend and the fanged bat logo of the film series. So it's not a coincidence at all? This theme park really is themed after her favorite films? Her father notices her change of expression, and he nudges her in the ribs. Eh? I told you that you like it. This is all about those movies you like so much, huh? Ghost Boyfriend or whatever? It's Vampire Boyfriend, Dad, she says distantly, but she's too mesmerized by her surroundings to put much feeling into the barb. How much for a balloon? Asks her father, pulling open his wallet and quickly thumbing through a stack of local currency. Oh, no charge, says the balloon vendor brightly. He plucks a string from the bundle and hands it over. Everything's free for our valued special ticket holders. Well, would you listen to that, says her father. He replaces his wallet in his back pocket. Now, this is the kind of carnival that I wish we had back in the States. The girl awkwardly takes the proffered balloon. She feels silly holding it, but she's more confused about why it's free. The whole point of offering free entry into a carnival is to gouge people with overpriced rides and souvenirs, right? But everywhere she looks, she can't help but notice signs advertising free corn dogs and bumper cars, unlimited rides for $0. How can this carnival make enough money to keep operating if it's not charging for anything? In fact, how can this carnival make enough money to keep operating when it's based around a niche film like Vampire Boyfriend? Are there really that many Vampire Boyfriend fans out here to keep this place in business? Not that there's anyone else around. As she scans her surroundings, she realizes that, while there are plenty of costume employees bustling around the fair, she doesn't see any other fair goers. It's as if this whole carnival was created and maintained solely for her benefit. Hey, Pumpkin, how about a ride? I bet you'd love to try out some bumper cars, huh? Says her father. How about we go for a race, and you can see if you can beat your old man, huh? He points to a bumper car ride across the midway. The girl stares. Like all the other rides, it's covered in Vampire Boyfriend murals. This one depicts a young woman running away from a pack of werewolves, and the young woman looks exactly like the girl. It couldn't be. But there's no other explanation. The young woman in the mural matches exactly the description of the girl's character Vampire Girlfriend from her fanfiction story, and the image of the werewolves looks like it's an illustration of the scene where Vampire Girlfriend gets kidnapped. How could this be? Could it be that the artist, obviously a fan of the Vampire Boyfriend films, is also familiar with her fanfiction? But even if that was the case, it's absurd to think that he would use it as an inspiration for a theme park ride. Who other than her would possibly recognize this scene? Says the girl's mother, walking up behind her and peering at the mural. Why, that girl looks just like you. I know, she does, says the girl quickly. It's almost a relief to know that her mother has also noticed the resemblance. At least it means that she's not imagining things. At the same time, she feels a twinge of guilt. Readers online are always accusing her of using Vampire Girlfriend as a thinly disguised self-insert. Seeing this larger-than-life picture of Vampire Girlfriend makes her think that there might be some merit to the accusation. Come on, you lot, stop worrying about some old picture and let's have some fun, says her father. He offers money to the ticket taker parked behind the kiosk, but the man merely shakes his head. Your money is no good here, sir, says the ticket taker. The bumper cars are free for our favored guests today. Their father clambers into the rink and ambles toward a bumper car. Her mother tugs at the girl's arm as if to encourage her to join in, but the girl resists. "Come on, what's gotten into you?" says her mother. "This place is just weird," says the girl. "Like, half of the stuff here isn't even from the official vampire boyfriend lore. It's all stuff that I made up for my stories." Her mother rolls her eyes in annoyance. "Really? We go to all this trouble to find something that you would like to do, and all you want to do is complain?" "I'm sorry, ma'am, is there some problem here?" The family is startled as another employee walks up to them. He's also dressed like vampire boyfriend, and a wide smile is plastered across his face. "You folks look like you're upset about something." "You're damn right I'm upset about something," yells the girl. In her rage, she throws her drink at the employee. He barely reacts as the cup explodes against his chest, dousing him with sticky soda. "What's going on here? Where did you hear about Vampire Girlfriend?" "Ma'am, Playland is designed to give every visitor the perfect experience," says the employee blandly. "That's not good enough. Tell me what's going on here." The employee's attitude changes on a dime. His bright smile fades, and suddenly his tone turns stern. "Ma'am, I'm afraid that you're going to ruin everyone's fun if you keep up this sort of behavior. We like to keep things fun here at Playland. If you want to spoil the fun, I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to leave." "Fine, then we'll leave." "Oh, come on, young lady, we just got here," snaps her mother. "We literally drove all day to get here and you want to leave after just one ride? You don't even like rides." "There's a principal involved here," says her father sternly as he saunters up. "Young lady, if that's your attitude, then I think maybe you should go wait in the car, because your mother and I intend to have a good time." The girl doesn't have a chance to argue. The employee rests his hands heavily on her shoulders and turns her around. "Don't worry, folks. We'll escort her back to your car. You can join her as well when you're ready." The girl cannot believe what's happening. The employee politely but firmly steers her toward the exit, and Frog marches her out the gate. He abandons her in the parking lot, tipping his hat and smiling brightly before he disappears back inside the park. "Please try to enjoy yourself, ma'am, until your parents are ready to join you. In the meantime, why don't you work on that new fanfiction you've been planning?" "How do you know about that?" yells the girl. The employee doesn't answer, simply turning and fading back into the crowd. She rushes to the gate, but the gatekeeper stops her. "Sorry, ma'am, no re-entry without a ticket." "But I have a ticket," she cries. "You saw it. My dad gave it to you like half an hour ago. Come on, you can't be serious." She tries to push past him, but the gatekeeper grabs her wrists with surprising strength and holds her. Still smiling, he firmly escorts her back out to her car before releasing her. "Please, ma'am, don't make a scene. You're going to disturb our guests." "Who's in charge here? I need to talk to the manager. I want my parents back right now." The gatekeeper doesn't even respond. He simply returns to his station. There's nothing that the girl can do now but wait. She sits down in the gravel and leans her back against the side of the car. Minutes turn to hours, and still her parents haven't returned. Eventually, she goes back to yell at the gatekeeper again. "Where are my parents? They should have been back hours ago." "Sorry, ma'am. I guess your parents are just having too much fun right now. I'm sure you'll see them again soon, though," says the gatekeeper. The girl shivers as she feels a bite in the cool twilight air. She notices that the sun is starting to dip behind the mountains. It'll be dark soon. How much longer could they take? Even if they decided to ride on every ride in the park, surely they would be done by now. "What time does the park close?" asks the girl, a note of panic rising in her voice. The gatekeeper blinks serenely. "Playland is open 24/7, ma'am. We're always here when you want to play." The girl feels the color drain from her face as she ponders the possibilities. Her father has the car keys, so she can't take the car to go for help. She pulls out her cell phone, but she doesn't know the number she would need to alert any local authorities. And it's not like she speaks the language anyway. Other than the employees here at Playland, she hasn't met a single person in this whole trip who speaks English. She's completely helpless, trapped, and there's nothing that she can do except wait and hope. As the night settles in, she realizes that her wait might have just started. It might not be the happiest place on Earth, but it definitely tries to be. And while the world is full of sketchy amusement parks, most of them just want your money. The amusement park known as SCP-4367, however, genuinely wants you to have a good time. Sometimes it wants you to have a good time, whether you want to or not. SCP-4357 is a theme park with an area of approximately 4 square kilometers, located somewhere in Poland. The park has 4 entrances, at each of the cardinal directions. SCP-4357 is highly selective about who it allows to enter the park, restricting access to parties that meet the following criteria. The group must contain at least 2 adults in a romantic relationship. It must contain at least 1 member who is under the age of 18 and who thinks of the aforementioned romantic couple as their guardians. And every member of the party must possess a free ticket, hereafter referred to as SCP-4357-B. The park does not charge for admission, and the only way to gain access is to have possession of an instance of SCP-1357-B. Once inside, SCP-1357 looks like any other carnival, with thrill rides, amusement arcades, midway games, and concession booths. Highly unusual for a carnival, though, is that SCP-1357 does not accept any money. All rides, food, and souvenirs are free. The layout and theme of the park are different for different visitors and appear to be highly contingent on the desires of the youngest member of any visiting party. Often, the park will appear themed after various popular media properties, such as Batman, Winnie the Pooh, or Barney the Dinosaur. However, visiting parties accompanied by more imaginative kids may encounter substantially weirder things in the park, including talking animals, sentient foodstuffs, temporal displacements, and even extra-dimensional portals. Although the park normally sits empty, when a group meeting entry requirements arrive at the gate, SCP-1357 will spontaneously manifest a full working staff, people designated as SCP-1357-A. Instances of SCP-1357-A appear to be ordinary humans of various ages, ethnicities, sexes, and genders, all clothed in matching uniforms, suggesting that they are employees of the park. Instances of SCP-1357-A are exceptionally friendly and helpful, and are extremely dedicated to making sure that visitors to SCP-1357 have a good time. In fact, there's nothing that they care about more. There is, however, a darker side to SCP-1357, and one incident suggests the frightening lengths to which the park will go to make sure that its younger visitors truly enjoy their stay. As part of an experiment, a Foundation agent visited the park with his own family, each member equipped with audio recording devices that continuously transmitted to Foundation consoles. During his stay, he attempted to interrogate an instance of SCP-1357-A. The instance of SCP-1357-A refused to answer the agent's questions about the purpose or origin of the park, instead lamenting that the agent's attitude was going to spoil the fun for his family. Eventually, instances of SCP-1357-A escorted the agent to an exit and forcibly removed him from the park. When his wife attempted to follow him, the couple's daughter refused to leave. Instances of SCP-1357-A separated the daughter from her family, removing the wife from the park and keeping the daughter inside, leaving the parents with only vague assurances that their daughter would be returned when she was ready to leave the park. Attempts to forcibly recover the daughter proved futile, and even a well-armed rescue team was unable to overcome the seemingly infinite numbers of SCP-1357-A that SCP-1357 manifested to protect itself. Hopes that SCP-1357 might indeed allow the daughter to leave when she became bored with the park attractions also proved to be futile. Audio captured from the daughter's recording device seems to indicate that when she eventually demanded that SCP-1357-A's release her, she was instead placed into some sort of machine that altered or brainwashed her into becoming an SCP-1357-A herself. Subsequent park visits by Foundation researchers have revealed a new SCP-1357-A that matches the daughter's physical description but does not display any memories of her past life. Interactions with the SCP-1357-A that resembles the missing daughter reveal that, like other instances of SCP-1357-A, her only thoughts are on how to please park visitors and help them enjoy a pleasant visiting experience. In the end, Playland may offer the ultimate amusement park experience for free, but it might still exact a price that's way too high. Uncle S is the worst. Always has been. Every time the two of them go over to his house, he just sits in his room all day on his computer. He doesn't talk to them, just grunts occasionally, and never cooks them any food. The siblings have learned at this point to tell their mom to pack them lunch. Worst of all, though, Uncle S is just a little strange. He has all these posters up all over his house, some of them with underdressed ladies on them. The brother's little sister always covers his eyes to stop him from looking. But there are other posters too, weirder ones, with these symbols on them and quotes written underneath. Neither of the kids can really read enough to know what the quotes mean, but their mom always gets very tense whenever they ask about them. She says they are something to do with politics, whatever that means. You know someone's weird when even their mom agrees. Uncle S is just weird. But there is a big upside to being at his house. The two of them can just sit downstairs in the lounge playing video games. He's got a big TV and a bunch of different game consoles, most of which are older than the two of them. This week, he's even got a new box next to the TV. It's full of old wires, controllers, and games. And when they say old, they mean old. It all smells of dust. The brother reaches inside and pulls out a big gray box. The top half of it is lighter gray, and the bottom darker. There's some red writing along the front of it. He carefully spells it out in his head before saying the words out loud. He doesn't want his little sister to know that he struggles with long words. Nintendo Entertainment System. His little sister huffs and sits on the sofa. She doesn't want to play that stupid thing. It looks old, and the dust is making her sneeze. This whole house is dirty and gross. The TV and games consoles are the only nice thing in here. Why would she want to play with the gross one? The brother ignores her and tries to plug it into the TV. Wait, where's the HDMI on the back of this thing? He gives up pretty quickly. On the sofa, his sister switches on the TV and grabs the Xbox controller. The familiar Cuphead music fills the room. They turn it down quickly. Can't be annoying Uncle S, who's sitting upstairs on his computer. Why does she always want to play Cuphead? It annoys her brother so much. They can't even beat the first level. It's way too hard. She chooses 2-player, and Cuphead and Mugman both appear in the field, sunflower men parachuting down around them. "You're up!" the announcer yells on the screen. His sister starts running along as Cuphead, but bumps into the end of the screen. They need to both play together for this to work, but the brother isn't interested today. He reaches into the Nintendo box and rummages around, finding something that fits perfectly into his hand. Something with a trigger. No way. He pulls the strange toy gun out of the box and holds it in the air triumphantly. It's gray, matching the NES console, with an orange trigger and the word Nintendo written on the side in that same red writing. A cord dangles out of the bottom of it. Immediately, he spins around and points it at his sister and shoots. Nothing happens. No noise, no lights. She just sits there and scowls at him. Fine. He gets up off the floor and grabs the second Xbox controller. They run past the sunflower men and shoot the toadstool, but die at the first purple flower. Great. The boy is sick of this game. He doesn't want to keep playing it every week. He wants to play with the gun. Imagine what games he could play with that. He picks it back up. Cuphead and Mugman respawn, and the music starts over again. Very carefully, he peers down the barrel and takes aim at Cuphead. He squeezes the trigger. Bam! A puff of smoke, and Cuphead turns into a red ghost, pink heart beating. Wait, how did that happen? His sister didn't run into anything. She yells at him. That wasn't fair. The brother is very confused. He looks back down at the gun. It wasn't even plugged in, and it wasn't an Xbox gun. So, how come it worked? He points it at Mugman and shoots. Bam! Another puff of smoke, and Mugman's ghost floats off the screen. The menu pops up, and the brother hits retry. The level starts again. The music kicks off, and the announcer yells, but Cuphead and Mugman aren't there. His sister wiggles the stick a few times. Nothing. The characters don't appear. What are you doing? Keep playing, she yells at him. But the brother can't see any characters left on the screen. Why is she pretending to see them still? Footsteps creak the floorboards above their heads. Uh-oh, now they've done it. Uncle S appears on the stairs, scowling at them both. Immediately, each sibling points at the other one and blames them. Uncle S doesn't say a word. Instead, he glares at them as he walks over and snatches away their controllers. He turns and goes back upstairs. No more video games. No fair. The two of them slump on the couch, arms crossed, not saying anything. The NES zapper sits between them. Looks like they'll just have to watch TV instead. It's the brother's turn to choose something. He goes on Netflix and puts on Avatar: The Last Airbender, her least favorite show. The opening credits roll, telling them all about the Fire Nation's attack. His sister snatches the gun up from the seat and points it at the screen, aiming at all the characters that pop up. Her brother ignores her. She's just being silly again. The episode starts. Aang is in a city in the Earth Nation, walking around a market surrounded by... His sister squeals. He looks at the TV, confused. Nothing has really happened. The characters are just standing around at the market talking. But his sister stares at the screen wide-eyed, almost a little scared looking. What's she doing? She points at the screen in amazement and says that Aang is dead. She pointed the gun at him and shot, and now he's dead. Yeah, right. Aang is perfectly fine. He's standing right there talking to Katara. The brother snatches the gun back and fires it at the screen. Bam! A gunshot rings out through the town square, and Aang crumples to the ground. Katara screams and runs over to him. She tries desperately to wake him up, but there's no use. He just lies there dead in the square. No blood, of course. This is a children's show, after all. Katara starts sobbing desperately and looks imploringly at the screen. The brother's mouth hangs open. Seriously? That's how the show ends? He thought there were a bunch of episodes left. How are they supposed to defeat the Fire Nation now? Who'd be the next Avatar? He looks over at his sister. Her mouth is hanging open still as well. Very hesitantly, he raises the barrel again and takes aim at one of the market stalls. He pulls the trigger. Bam! A watermelon explodes into red mush. The characters all jump back and run for cover. Sokka peers out from behind one of the carts, staring straight at them, before ducking away again. This show is weird. I don't want to watch it anymore, the brother says, throwing the gun back down on the sofa and pressing back on Netflix. He's going to pretend like that didn't happen. His sister snatches the remote out of his hand and goes across to HBO Max. She puts on Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. That's a safe option. They've seen every episode of that. No surprise endings, no characters dying, and most importantly, they both like it. The episode opens the same as it always does. Roadrunner is out running around the canyon. Wile E. Coyote has a new plan. He's going to paint what looks like a tunnel into the side of the cliff and make Roadrunner run straight into it. Foolproof. But suddenly, his little sister has snatched the gun up off the sofa and is firing it here, there, and everywhere at the screen. But that look of horror is gone. She's laughing. No fair. He can't see what she's enjoying so much. It's just a normal episode. So he snatches the gun back from her and points it at Roadrunner. He squeezes the trigger. Bam! But Roadrunner just sidesteps the bullet and gives his trademark meep meep. He fires again. Bam! 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 But every bullet seems to miss Roadrunner entirely, who dashes off into the sunset as out from the bush creeps a very injured Wile E. Coyote. Bullet wounds all over his body. He scowls at the brother and trudges off down the road, walking straight into the fake tunnel he painted. After a moment, the brother breaks out in laughter too. This gun is amazing. What should they watch next? Who have they always wanted to shoot? What if they shoot a hole in the dome around Sandy the Squirrel's house? Or killed a shredder? Could Sonic outrun a bullet? Or what about all those silly children's shows his sister watches? Could he finally get those characters to stop singing all the time? He's laughing so loud, in fact, that he doesn't hear the footsteps coming down the stairs. He doesn't realize Uncle S is there until the shadow falls over him. Having fun? The brother tries to explain as best he can, but the gun is already out of his hands. The TV is off, and the remote disappears into Uncle S's pocket. In a grump, the two children sit there bickering quietly until their mom comes to get them an hour later. That evening, Uncle S is doing the same thing he always does. He lies on the couch, feet kicked up, instant ramen in his hands. The news is on, running a lame story about the president visiting some kindergarten in the run-up to the next round of primaries. What a joke. Uncle S lies there seething, thinking to himself, as if that guy cares about any of those kids. If he did, he'd be clamping down much harder on the borders to stop foreigners from coming and ruining their futures. How are these true-blooded Americans going to have any chance in life when their own country is being overrun? He switches over the channel. There's some cartoon playing. He hates cartoons even more. He holds the NES Zapper aloft. He's been carrying it around all afternoon for some reason. Imagine if it was a real gun. Without thinking, he points the zapper at the TV and pulls the trigger. Bam! A gunshot makes him jump out of his skin. Was that outside? He looks back at the TV. The cartoon character is ducking down at the bottom of the frame, a bullet hole in the wall behind him. Oh, thank God. He was just in the show. Not a real gunshot. The character wags a finger at the screen. Careful now, the character says. If you keep doing that, the SCP Foundation is going to come and get you. SCP Foundation? That sounds dumb. This is why he doesn't watch cartoons. Animation is for kids. He flicks back over to the news. The president is still surrounded by children. Imagine if he could just point this gun at the president, right between his smug little eyes, gently squeeze the trigger, and bam! The shot makes him jump so violently that he spills boiling ramen all over his chest. He howls and leaps to his feet, trying to shake all the noodles off. Great, that was his last t-shirt. He's been wearing it for 4 days now, didn't even need to wash it yet. What was that noise anyway? He glances up at the screen, and his jaw drops. The President of the United States is lying dead at the front of the kindergarten classroom. Blood trickles out from under his body. Secret Service agents swarm around him, shielding him from view and yelling at the cameraman to shut that thing off. The news cuts back to a distressed anchor. She's trying to talk, but is so overwhelmed by what she's just witnessed that the words aren't really coming. A breaking news headline crawls across the bottom of the screen. Breaking, the President of the United States assassinated. No way. Uncle S drops the gun and stands there panting. He didn't do that, did he? No. No, of course he didn't. That was a coincidence, all it was, just a coincidence. If it was real, then he would point the gun at the anchor right now, pull the trigger, and... Bam! Her head rocks back. Blood sprays the back wall of the newsroom. The feed cuts out, and an ad break starts. It's some stupid infomercial, only the actors in it keep glancing nervously at the camera and slightly hunch behind tables and objects when they get the chance. Uncle S just keeps standing there staring at the screen all the way through the night. 2 weeks later, Uncle S is running out of food. He ran out of ramen a couple of days ago, beans yesterday, and today he's having the last scraps of moldy bread. He hasn't left the house in all that time. He can't anymore. He's the most wanted man in the United States. Every night, the news is the same. His mugshot was plastered on the screen appealing to friends, families, witnesses, anyone to come forward and identify this man. Somehow, nobody has yet. His sister tried to call a handful of times, but he didn't pick up. Before long, he just disconnected his phone line entirely. The silence is better, helps him focus on his work. He's drawn up a list. In fact, he'd started to draw it up before he'd ever discovered the gun. On it are the names of every politician, business owner, media puppet, fake news spreading Illuminati shill he can think of. He just sits there hopping between TV channels, gun at the ready. He's got his laptop down here too, and he just spends most of the day searching through YouTube for different videos of people he's been wanting to kill. He'd be lying if he said there weren't a few annoying YouTubers that had made the list too. You know the ones he's talking about. The world is starting to fall apart out there. With the president gone, along with half of Congress and most major propaganda peddlers, it's all starting to unravel, just like he'd always wanted. The military is being drafted in to suppress riots across the country, but doing little to contain it all. Random shootings keep breaking out, leading to more and more chaos. It will be painful for a while, Uncle S knows that, but in time, they'll learn their lesson. He just wonders how long he'll have. He can't keep getting away with this forever. Something's gonna give soon. It's got to. They have his mugshot, they have his name, and yet, no one is surrounding his house. He knows that because he set up webcams all around the perimeter of the house. He has the live feed open on his laptop. If anyone comes within 20 feet of the property, they're getting a neat little hole in the front of their head and getting the back of it blown into 100 red, pink, and white chunks to give his weeds a bit of iron. In fact, he knows they'll be on their way soon. He knows that because some rat from his blog will have told them. He's been documenting everything on here. Masking his IP address first, Uncle S has been recording and boasting about each and every kill anonymously as green text. At first, he kept it coy, writing in riddles and rhymes about the public figures he was murdering, but now, he is up to such a high tempo that they're just a bullet point list of names. Of course, his posts have all been flooded with trolls acting like he hadn't done anything at all, pretending like the president is still alive along with everyone else, photoshopping screenshots to make it look like they were getting new photos of these people. Great trolling. They almost had him doubting his own eyes at times, but every night, the news channels didn't lie. Another 232 public figures dead, shot through the head by an unknown gunman. But tonight, they'll be coming for him. The SCP Foundation. They'll be on their way. The characters on the TV have told him all he needs to know about them. He can't hide here forever. He almost wants them to come, really. He very explicitly made a threat tonight. A threat about a deadly surprise under the stadium at the Super Bowl. They're not going to ignore that. Any moment now. He's ready for the shootout. He has his webcam set up to cover every inch of his surrounding yards. Any SWAT team or SCP agent that gets close will get gunned down immediately. Their only option would be to hit him with a drone strike, and what a way to go that would be. No one would ever forget him. He'd be a martyr for the cause. They'd build statues in his honor. He licks his lips and stares at the feed. Nothing. For almost 45 minutes. Nothing. There, a shadow crosses the corner of the frame. Then another. A gun points into the shot. They're here. A team of them by the looks of things. He can see their shadows lining up along the sidewalk out by the front of his house. He'll wait. He's gonna wait for them to all line up nicely in the shot, then open fire. He's been practicing so much that his aim's gotten pretty good. Clean shot to the head, one by one. Now. Bam, 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 bam. The gunshots ring out one after the other as he fires at the laptop screen. He catches each of the SCP agents cleanly through the head, one after the other. A couple break for cover, but But there's no hope. Bam, bam, bam! He picks each of them off. He makes sure to shoot the last man in the leg and sits quietly for a moment, watching him crawl across the lawn. Uncle S raises the barrel and points it at the man's head. He squeezes the trigger. Crash! The front door flies open and Foundation field agents flood his house. But how can that be possible? He just killed all of them outside the front door. He watched them die. How are they still here? He looks incredulously out of the front door into the yard. No blood, no bodies, no evidence of what had just happened. The SCP agents swarm around him, guns raised and barking orders. He snaps back to reality and panics, throwing his arms in the air and letting the toy gun drop limply to the floor. I did it. I killed the President of the United States. It was me. He starts crying as they handcuff him and press his face into the carpet. The agents question him, confused. What is he talking about? The president is alive and well. He's in the middle of his next election campaign, doing better than ever in the polls. I killed them. I killed them all. It was me. Again, the agents are perplexed. As the uniformed men drag him outside and throw him into the back of the van, he can't help but wonder why everything seems so peaceful out here. Where has his apocalypse gone? The doors slam shut. In this moment, I am very much hoping that no one viewing this video is in possession of SCP-674, or an equivalent weapon currently unknown to the Foundation. You see, while SCP-674, otherwise known as the Exposition gun, poses no threat to me in the real world, it could have a nasty effect on your perception of reality. The Exposition gun appears to be an entirely normal Nintendo Entertainment System zapper. As far as the Foundation can tell, it matches up perfectly with other models released in North America from around 1985. You can take the zapper apart, examine each plastic and electronic component individually, reassemble it, and you will fail to see anything out of the ordinary for this video game peripheral. And yet, if you were to hold this gun up to your screen right now, pointed at me, and fire, you would hear a gunshot ring out and watch me collapse in my chair, dead. For the rest of the duration of the video, you would watch me sit here in silence. Videos would continue to upload to this channel, but each of them would probably just show my corpse as it slowly rots away in this chair. To anyone else, however, it would be business as usual as I uncover more horrifying, unnerving, fascinating, and bizarre tales from the SCP Foundation. The Exposition gun only works on its user, forever altering the reality they perceive through whichever digital screen they fire at. If they shoot the president, as Mr. S did, then in the continuity of any news program they watch, the president will forever be dead. The same applies to fictional shows as well. If the main character dies off, a sidekick steps in to take their place, and the story changes accordingly. It is to be noted that each show or movie follows its own internal logic, however. The children were unable to shoot Roadrunner because he always gets away, but in classic cartoon fashion, all of their missed bullets ended up hitting a very forlorn Wile E. Coyote. In this context, however, the gun was proved not to be fatal, as in the universe of that show, explosions, electrocutions, falls from cliffs, and drownings can never kill the coyote, so of course a gunshot would be no different. What is most interesting, however, is the gun's apparent awareness of the SCP Foundation. Users who fire the gun into the camera frequently will find characters soon breaking the fourth wall and warning them to stop it soon, for fear of being caught by the Foundation. Perhaps most chilling and still unexplained to this day was Mr. S's ultimate demise. Between rounds of questioning, he was locked in a cell with a lone security camera watching him. Mr. S was observed conversing with the camera frequently, apparently hearing replies, though none could be heard in any of the recordings. Over time, these debates grew more and more aggressive until, all of a sudden, he was shot down in his cell. Researchers and agents rushed in, but were too late. 3 .38 caliber bullets were lodged in his chest, with no evidence of a shooter in sight. The man died on the scene, and researchers have since been wary about experimenting too much with the Exposition gun.
The Switchblade's knife glints in the dark, and the bully holding it runs through the arcade, screaming in terror. The kid watches, shocked by the insanity unfolding, as 20 tiny, vicious gorillas chase the knife-wielding bully as tears streak his face. This situation defies all explanation, unless you know about SCP-3092. Let's go back to the beginning. The kid almost trips over his laces as his chucks hammer against the sidewalk. The headphones for his Walkman bounce against his neck as the wind rushes past. Heaving in as much air as he can, the kid runs through town, looking desperately this way and that for any grown-ups he recognizes. No one. Just strangers with thick mustaches and perms chatting outside Blockbuster and Walden Books, totally oblivious to the fact that he's running for his life. The kid cocks an ear, and sure enough, he hears that all too familiar rolling, clattering sound coming after him. The skateboards are catching up. A few insults catch on the wind and float across to him. Four Eyes, Earthworm, and a good few names that he doesn't want to repeat. Apparently, their town used to have a good Native American community. That's why his parents had moved here. But nowadays, it seems to just be white faces all around him. From what the bullies are shouting as they chase him, and the total apathy of the grown-ups on the sidewalks at the words, it's no wonder everyone else moved away. A rock hits the back of his head, almost knocking his glasses off. The sound of the tiny wheels roars louder and louder with every block. He needs to find an escape, and fast. Home's way too far away. His parents aren't expecting him home until nightfall. He needs a spot to lay low. The arcade? It's closed today, but the owner told him where the spare key is. He could go there, but he needs to lose them first. His lungs are burning, and his legs are starting to give up on him. Ice! The kid sees it too late and steps straight onto a patch of it. His Converse slides out from under him and flings his limbs this way and that, trying desperately to stay on his feet as he skids across the ice. His momentum throws him forward, and he sticks out another foot, catching himself back on the sidewalk. Perfect. He turns just in time to see the four bullies on their skateboards hitting the patch and going flying. They land in a heap together, groaning and scuffling, trying to get back up. Now's his chance. The kid shoots off down an alleyway, loops back around the block, turns up a side street, and arrives at the arcade without having looked back once. He snatches the key from under the gutter and looks around the quiet street. Nobody there, thank goodness. He darts through the door and locks it behind him with trembling fingers. Tears flood his eyes as he lets his forehead rest against the door. Every damn day, it's more of the same. Why can't he just have some peace? Why can't he just be normal? The kid stands there crying for a long time. He can't tell his parents what's going on. They've got enough of their own problems. He tried to tell his teachers, but at lunch, he overheard them laughing and joking about it all between themselves. It just sometimes feels like no one's on his side. The kid takes a deep breath and rubs the moisture out of his eyes. That's enough. If he keeps thinking about it all day, it's only going to feel worse. He's on his own now. He's safe. What he needs to do is just enjoy the little bit of peace he has now before it all starts again. And what better place to be laying low than the arcade? He hits the lights. Pinball, claw machines, and arcade cabinets all light up and start playing over one another. Air hockey, basketball hoops, and foosball all beep at him invitingly. He can't help but let a smile spread across his face. He walks across the carpet looking this way and that at Frogger, Pac-Man, Galaga, Donkey Kong. So many choices, so many choices. He hops on the counter and hits the side of the cash register. It pops open, revealing trays stacked full of quarters. Mr. Burns, the guy who owns the place, told him he's allowed to let himself in and use the money in the register to play whenever he wants, on the house. As the kid scoops a handful out of the drawer, he realizes he might not be totally on his own in this town after all. Pac-Man beeps into life as soon as the quarters fall into the slot. He grabs the joystick and stares intently at the screen, darting this way and that through the maze, munching. Try as they might, the four ghosts just can't catch him. The kid grins. All that time running from four bullies wasn't quite for nothing, was it? But after a couple of levels, he gets bored. He always plays Pac-Man, so much so that he's memorized his route through the first few levels. Kinda takes the fun out of things a bit. He lets the ghosts around him and watches Pac-Man swirl away into nothing. Frogger isn't much better. He never really clicked with this one for some reason, just felt too stop-start. He lets the frog get run over and stands back, letting out a sigh. Is there anything in here he hasn't touched yet? Wait, what's that? In the corner of the room, there's a new machine, still half covered in a sheet. It hasn't even been plugged into the wall yet. The kid skips over to it and bends down to hook it up. There. He stands back, takes hold of the sheet, and pulls as dramatically as he can. It billows and unfurls to reveal a claw machine. Oh. It's just another claw machine. Black Tie Toys is written on the side in classic 80s lettering, just under 2 meters tall or so. Nothing to make it stand out from the other cabinets in here. But not only does it look boring, it doesn't have anything he wants inside. Just a bunch of plushy gorillas. Not exactly a brand new cabinet, but worth a shot anyway. The kid slots a coin in and cracks his knuckles. Here goes nothing. The claw swings to life at the slightest touch of the joystick. These things are normally rigged, so he's not exactly expecting much from it.
May as well just drop the claw here. All the toys in this one are the same anyway. No way. It's caught onto one of the gorilla's feet, lifting the toy up as it dangles upside down. It swings precariously this way and that as the claw guides it over to the hole. It's a defective toy with a bit of stitching loose on its shoulder, but he couldn't care less. The thrill of getting one first time. The toy drops into the chute and thumps to the bottom, just behind the little door. The kid punches the air and yells in triumph. He did it, first try. He bends down and reaches out into the little flap, just as the flap opens by itself. He freezes as the little toy gorilla opens the door for himself and hops out onto the carpet. The kid yelps and jumps backwards, tripping over his feet. Somewhere in that chute, between falling in and popping out, this little toy it had come alive. The little gorilla does the same as the kid, leaping backwards defensively. It raises two soft fists with surprisingly dexterous fingers and looks the kid up and down warily. It orders the kid in a stern, militaristic voice to identify himself. The kid's jaw drops open. It can speak? The little plushy gorilla's voice is gruff, but high-pitched enough to match his size. He barely comes up to the kid's knee. The gorilla asks him if he's friendly. The kid nods quickly. The gorilla's eyes narrow.
What's your favorite fruit?
The gorilla asks.
Bananas. Phew,
The gorilla says, dropping his fists.
you never can be too careful.
The kid dusts himself off and climbs to his feet. The gorilla deftly scales the side of the claw machine and hangs off it, surveying the arcade. The kid asks his name, which seems to stump the little toy. It picks at the loose stitching on his shoulder. The kid suggests calling him Stitches. The gorilla salutes at the sound of his new name.
All right, kid, what's the operation? Give me the sit rep.
Operation? Sit rep? The kid stands there, nonplussed for a moment. Well, they're in an arcade. Stitches nods sagely, taking the intel on board. And they have to stay here until nightfall. The little gorilla has already swung himself up on top of the machine to get a better view of strategic locations.
And where are the hostiles?
The kid hesitates. Stitches looks down at him knowingly. An unspoken understanding passes between them. They could be attacked at any moment. The pair of them take a walk around the room, the kid explaining the situation. 4 bullies, 3 entrances, front door, alley door, and a window. No back rooms or hallways, those are all locked. The gorilla takes a candy cane from behind the counter and sticks it in the side of his mouth like a cigar. He doesn't seem to be able to chew it or even suck on it. He is just a toy after all. But the kid feels like he can't really point that out. He has no idea how fragile his comrade's ego is.
Look, I can't actually taste it, okay? I can only see, hear, and touch. I'm insecure about it. Leave me alone. We haven't got much time anyway, the gorilla says. We've got to prepare our defenses.
The two of them go to work, Stitches barking orders at the kid as they ready themselves for the bully's arrival. The kid asks Stitches what exactly their aim is. The plushie looks at the kid like it's a trick question.
Total domination, absolute victory, annihilation, a butchering.
The kid straightens, suddenly feeling very unsure about all of this. He tells Stitches that he doesn't want to kill anyone or anything like that.
Kill?
The little gorilla falls backwards off the coin machine in surprise.
Kill? No. What's wrong with you? Of course not. We're gonna tickle, bamboozle, inconvenience, and bonk. Where those things fit within the confines of the Geneva Convention, of course.
Bang, bang, bang! The hammering fists on the door are so loud that it shakes on its hinges. They've barely had 10 minutes to get ready. That's not fair. The kid can see the shadows of feet blocking the streetlight. His knees go weak almost straight away at the sound of their cat calling through the cracks. They've found him. He could make a break for the alley door. If he's quiet enough, he could... But it's too late. As he looks at the fire escape, he can see another pair of legs blocking his exit. No point jumping out of the window. They'd see him straight away and have him blocked off from both sides. He looks down at his squishy little companion. They have no choice. It's time for guerrilla warfare. The front door crashes open, splinters of wood flying everywhere, and 3 of the bullies storm in. Front and center is their ringleader, dressed in all-black skater clothes with a constant sneer on his face. He must easily be a good foot taller than the kid, but even he looks small standing in between the twins. Hulking, egg-shaped boys with no hair on their heads or glints in their eyes. The banging noise behind the kid tells him that the 4th bully is trying to kick his way through the alley door. They don't have time to deal with that now. The twins are storming over to him like a pair of freight trains. His legs are really shaking now. He needs to move, but Stitches is gone. That loyal gorilla had been at his side just a moment ago, but as soon as trouble arrived, he disappeared, just like they always do. The twins are nearly upon him now. The kid doesn't have a choice. He takes a deep breath and closes his eyes, ready for a beating. Yeah! The primal scream fills the arcade. Out of the rafters, a tiny toy gorilla swings down on a loose cable, heading straight for the twins' faces. Their round faces barely have time to go from angry to confused before the cuddly toy is on top of them, pummeling them with its soft fists. Turns out those fists aren't worth much in a fight. Twin 1 pulls the ape off his face and holds it at arm's length. Two of them stare at Stitches, who's swinging his fists wildly through thin air. Apparently lacking the brain power to be stunned that an inanimate cuddly toy has gained sentience, Twin 1 tosses Stitches over the arcade cabinets, and the pair of them continue their advance. Except the distraction worked just long enough. The kid grins and runs around the cotton candy machine, which by now is rumbling and banging, letting out a thin plume of smoke. His smile falters as they close in on him. Any second now. But the twins are closing in on him, thick arms outstretched to grab him when... bang! The cotton candy machine explodes. Hot, sugary webbing bursts out in all directions, wrapping around the bullies and missing the top of the kid's ducking head by less than an inch. He can't believe that actually worked. Taking a step back to survey the damage, he looks down at the enormous twins, bound up in cotton candy and arguing with each other. The alley door crashes open, and the fourth bully rushes in. He's skinny, with tattoos all down both his arms. Looking at him now up close, the kid reckons he must be a good 10 years older than the other bullies. Why he's still hanging out with high school kids is anyone's guess. The kid gulps. He's only got one more trick up his sleeve, but 2 bullies left to go. The ringleader's disappeared somewhere. He can't worry about that now, though. He just has to focus on the old one. The man is leering at him from the back of the arcade. He reaches round to his back pocket and pulls out something small and shiny. Flicking open the knife blade, he spins the blade around between his fingers and winks at the kid. He feels all the blood leave his face. This isn't a game anymore. He needs to get out of here. The kid makes a break for it, running towards the open front doors, but in a flash, the old bully is in front of him, playing with the knife and smiling that same sinister smile. He tries to run back the other way, to the alley door, but the bully is blocking him again, before he can even take a few steps. How is he that fast? Be calm, think. The kid reaches into his pocket. Here goes nothing. He turns to run back to the front doors, but this time throws the pinballs all across the carpet. For a second, it looks like it hasn't worked. The old bully steps in the gaps between the pinballs. He looks down to see them all there scattered around in front of him, but too late. His foot is already landing on about 5 metal balls that all shoot out from under him. He goes flying, crashing right into a Galaga machine head first. His leg twitches a couple times, and he goes still. The knife flies out of his hand, arcing through the air, spinning round and round and round, before landing with a gentle thud on the soft carpet. A sneaker treads onto the handle, a sneaker attached to a hairy leg sticking out of a pair of cord pants. The ringleader bends over to pick up the blade, flicks it open, and holds it against the neck of the little gorilla clutched in his arms. It would almost look funny, the bully threatening a cuddly toy, if the toy wasn't writhing around in fear. The kid cries out in panic for the knife-wielding bully to put his plush gorilla friend down. He's got nothing left, no more tricks up his sleeve. It's over. The bully just grins maniacally at him and pushes the knife harder against the squishy neck. He's got Stitches by the shoulder of his arm, just above where the stitching is coming loose. The bully's back is to the cash register. On the wall behind him, dozens of giant cuddly prizes hang lifeless. The bully hisses that the kid is gonna pay for making them run all over town. The kid nods his head. He will, he promises. They can beat him up or whatever they like, just don't hurt Stitches. The bully laughs at the gorilla's name.
You gave him a name? You're such a loser. Couldn't come up with anything better than Stitches. What does that name even mean? Let me show ya, the gorilla yells. Twisting away from the blade, he reaches into the gap in his shoulder, crying out in pain, and pulls out handfuls of stuffing, throwing them up into the bully's face. It doesn't do much, but it's enough to distract him. The kid seizes his chance, dashing forward and shoving the bully square in the chest, knocking him backwards and freeing Stitches. The little gorilla runs off to safety straight away. The kid can hardly believe what he's seeing. The bully is getting to his feet now, knife still in hand, snarling, but almost immediately, his snarling is drowned out by the sound of a shrieking primate, then another one. Both kid and bully wheel round to see Stitches swinging across the wall of stuffed toys, giving them high fives. As soon as he touches each of them, they transform, falling and turning into crazed gorillas, all of them rushing straight at the bully. His eyes widen in terror. He turns on his heel and runs out through the open doors, pursued by a small army. He lashes out wildly as he goes, striking one of the gorillas down.
Stitches and the kid chase him to the doorway and watch as the little toy gorillas chase the bully off into the night, swinging on lampposts and leaping over cars.
Good thing he ran.
Stitches climbs up onto the kid's shoulder, popping his candy cane cigar back into his mouth.
Our fists are about as hard as Hello Kitty's. Let's see how long it takes him to figure that one out.
A whimper behind them sobers the moment. Turning around, they see the body of the gorilla toy that the bully punched as he left. It lies slumped on a pinball machine, stuffing bursting from its chest. Plumes of cotton cover the glass. Stitches buries his head in the kid's neck, sickened and devastated by the casualty. The dying gorilla looks at him with beady little eyes. It raises a dramatic hand towards him, breathing in shaky gasps.
Mr. Stitches, I don't feel so good.
Like a community theater actor doing Shakespeare, the little toy dies a dramatic death. Throwing his head back, he takes one desperate gasping breath and falls still. The kid stands there in shock, except the little gorilla does seem to be breathing, very lightly, as if pretending he's dead. The kid sidles up to the cabinet and pokes him.
Hello?
He pokes the gorilla again. It opens one eye and looks at him, annoyed.
I'm out of the game. Leave me alone.
Stitches hits the kid on the side of the head.
Hey, let him be out of the game in peace. Show some respect. Sorry.
The kid clasps his hands together in humility and stands by the pretend dying gorilla. Stitches salutes, until they get bored and go off to play a game of Galaga. It's the last day of 6th grade, and there are only seconds left before the final bell rings and school is officially out for summer. An excitable 11-year-old girl sits at her desk, bouncing her leg in anticipation and watching the clock. Soon, she'll have 3 glorious months of freedom. But more importantly, she can take her mom up on a life-changing promise. They made a deal when they moved to this new town. If she could get through 6th grade with straight A's and good feedback from her teachers, she could finally get a pet of her own. There were some stipulations, of course. The pet can't be too big, can't make a lot of noise, and needs to be something she can take care of by herself. It was hard work, but she buckled down, studied hard, and even found a math tutor. The time is now in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The last bell of the year rings, and the class erupts into cheers. Summer's here. She shoves her books into her bag and runs out the door so quickly, she barely catches her teacher's parting words of, "Have a great summer vacation, everyone." The halls are swamped with kids all rushing toward the buses, their parents' cars, or their final walk home of the school year. She's right there with them, the promise of the day putting an extra spring in her step. Many of the faces in the hall are still unfamiliar. After a year of being the new kid in town, she hasn't made many friends, but none of that matters now. She's going to get a special friend today, something all her own that she can nurture, play with, and won't ever have to worry about impressing. It's only a short walk to the pet store, and then an even shorter walk to her house. As she makes her way down the sidewalk, the sun beaming down on her smiling face, the girl lets her mind wander. What kind of pet should she get? A dog needs to be walked. That might be too much work. A fish? Maybe, but you can't play with a fish. You can't pet a fish, or at least it won't be happy if you try. She remembers a pet tarantula her eccentric aunt once had and shudders. No spiders, definitely not. She wants something friendly, something small enough that her mom won't complain, but something she can cuddle and really bond with. Whatever it ends up being, she's going to take great care of it. The walk feels much longer than it is, the anticipation stretching the minutes until they feel like hours. She spots the sign in the shape of a dog playing with a ball, and her heart skips a beat. She's reached the pet store. Inside, there are an overwhelming number of options. She walks through the reptile section, pressing her face to the class of tanks housing iguanas, slithery snakes, tiny darting lizards with brightly colored tails. Nearby, there are fat green tree frogs and bumpy toads with huge watery eyes. She briefly pauses at the fish, enticed by their vivid colors and the staggering variety of shapes and sizes. But a fish is such a boring pet, she thinks. What can you even do with a fish? She moves on, looking at a litter of fluffy tabby kittens. They romp and roll around on top of each other, flicking their tails and stretching their soft paws. They're adorable, and her heart melts. But then she thinks about having to scoop a litter box and decides to move on. There are roly-poly hamsters and sleek-looking rats, tiny white mice with pink eyes and gerbils running on wheels. Suddenly, a sign catches her eye. Exotic pets, it reads. What could be over there? She tiptoes into the section, almost feeling like she's stumbled into somewhere she shouldn't be. There are ferrets wiggling around and playing with a ball, fluffy chinchillas that look impossibly plush and soft to the touch, little sugar gliders peeking out of cloth pouches with wide eyes. There's even a skunk blinking at her curiosity. But nothing feels quite right. None of these pets seem like the one she has to bring home. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she spots something curious. A row of small cardboard packages covered with inviting cartoonish text, advertising something called a custom pet. She picks up one of the packages and reads the description. It sounds impossible, too good to be true. Just buy these packaged eggs, place them anywhere in your house, and a perfectly matched pet will hatch and fit right in. It will become exactly the kind of pet that you need. She looks for any sort of fine print, something that might indicate this is a toy or some kind of joke, but it looks real. Could it be? Shyly, the girl takes one of the packages up to the cash register. The employee goes to scan it, but there's no barcode. "Did you bring this in with you?" the cashier asks. She shakes her head. "Okay, well, we don't sell these, so I guess you can just take it?" The girl's eyes go wide. Really? She can just have it for free? The cashier is already waving her off, beckoning the next customer to come check out. Not wanting to question her good luck, she takes off without a second thought. The run home from the pet store is a total blur of excitement. All she wants to do is get inside, make a peanut butter sandwich, and figure out where to put her new pet's egg before her mom gets home from work. Not that she's doing anything wrong. It's just easier if she takes care of things before her mom can ask too many questions. She's doing them both a favor, really, taking care of all the logistics so her mom doesn't have to worry about it. She pulls her house key from her pocket and unlocks the door with shaky hands. It's almost time. Forget the sandwich. The sandwich can wait. She needs to get upstairs to her room right now and start her life with her new pet, whatever it ends up being. She throws her backpack on her bed and sits down on the floor, tearing open the cardboard packaging. Inside, there are 6 tiny eggs sealed in plastic. She just wants one pet, so she'll start with one egg for now. Of course, if the pet ends up being lonely, maybe it'll want a friend? She shakes off the thought. She can figure all of those details out later. She's just about to puncture the plastic so the egg can breathe when she stops. Where should she put it? She was so excited to leave the store she forgot to pick up a tank or terrarium or somewhere a traditional pet would live. The packaging says these pets can live anywhere, but do they really mean anywhere? If she does something wrong and her new pet is hurt or doesn't hatch at all, it'll just break her heart. Then she spots a potential solution. An old dollhouse, frilly in pastel pink and surprisingly spacious inside, sits next to her bed. She hasn't played with dolls in a while, insisting she was too old for them when she started 6th grade. But now she's thrilled that she didn't get rid of her dollhouse just yet. Even if the dolls don't live there anymore, maybe now it can be a home for something new, for whatever hatches out of this strange little egg. Carefully, she breaks the plastic seal on the egg and places it inside the dollhouse. All of the doll furniture and little plastic choking hazards are gone, leaving only a pretty pink Victorian-style enclosure where the egg can safely hatch. Now, all she has to do is wait. Later that night, the girl wakes from a deep sleep to the sound of something moving inside the dollhouse. The skitter of tiny legs, the rustling of something inside the formerly vacant dollhouse. She sits up and is about to go peek inside when a chill of fear runs down her spine. What if it's something horrible? She doesn't know what kind of eggs those were. She'd never seen anything like them before. What if it's a spider or a worm or some other awful, monstrous thing she can't even imagine? And she brought it into her home, to where she and her mom sleep without even questioning it. She sits for a moment, the only sound the rustling of the thing in the dollhouse and her own short, panicked breaths. Then there's another sound. Light and sweet, like a little bird chirping. It's coming from the dollhouse. Curiosity finally gets the better of her, and she opens the dollhouse, lifting the roof off. Inside, she spots it. Her new pet. Feathery soft fur, pastel pink and white, covers the little animal, which is currently exploring its new home delightedly. It flicks around a poofy little tail that looks a bit like a lavender feather duster, and stops to blink up at her with 2 large, friendly purple eyes. Slowly, she reaches a hand down to pet the animal, and it nuzzles into her palm, body vibrating with something like a kitten's purr. Any tension she felt before melts out of her body as she realizes the packaging was not lying. She put the pet in an environment that was comforting, sweet, happy, a piece of childlike joy. and it had become the living embodiment of those things. For a brief moment, she wonders how she'll explain this new addition to the household, what she'll need to feed it, and what her mom will say. But then her new best friend chirps happily again, and all she can think is, this is going to be an amazing summer. Things worked out very well for the girl. Meanwhile, other families across town were screaming in horror as a tiny fire-breathing creature set their drapes ablaze, and another slowly dropped down from the ceiling on a silvery thread, blending into the shadows. This girl was not the only child to bring home one of these miraculous pets and hatch it in her home, and other children were much less careful about where they put the eggs. Of course, the children weren't to blame here. The blame lay with whoever was behind the design and widespread release of these odd little animals, also known as SCP-4550. SCP-4550 is a species of artificially synthesized creatures of unknown classification who are highly adaptable to any given environment. Their larvae will develop, grow, and change to fit whatever setting their eggs are placed in. Though adult specimens vary greatly in appearance, they all have markings on their underbelly that read, a Dr. Wondertainment trademark. Because of their highly adaptable nature, it is uncertain exactly what the original form of these creatures might look like. SCP-1550 eggs are 1 centimeter long, beige in color, and stored in airtight plastic packaging that prevents them from hatching until they are exposed to the outside air. The SCP Foundation first discovered SCP-1550 after a collection of bizarre cardboard packages were found in the exotic pets section of a pet store. None of the workers had ever seen these packages before and had never even heard of SCP-1550 prior to being asked about it. The packages were brought into containment immediately and were found to each contain 6 SCP-1550 eggs in airtight containers. The original packaging also contained an instruction leaflet, which I've managed to get my hands on a copy of. It reads, "Hey kids, your parents aren't letting you get a dog or cat? Don't fret, buy a Dr. Wondertainment custom pet. A Dr. Wondertainment's custom pet is far superior to an ordinary and boring cat or dog due to their original Adapto Eggs packaging, a Dr. Wondertainment invention. Just leave your custom pet Adapto Eggs around the house, and when they hatch, they'll fit right in. Perfect for apartments. To get your very own custom pets is easy, kids. Just put an egg in your house and break the plastic seal to give your new pet some air so it can hatch. Your new pet will be perfect for where you live, wherever you live. If your new custom pet seems lonely, just add another Adapto Egg and get him a new friend. Dr. Wondertainment is not responsible for injuries or death caused by this or any other product. Wondertainment custom pets are shipped out prefixed." Who exactly is this Dr. Wondertainment? A person? A corporation? A highly intelligent octopus with a penchant for toy design? The identity of the force behind the trademark is undetermined, but whatever Dr. Wondertainment is, one thing is certain. The toys they create are highly unusual. Dozens of Wondertainment's creations have been contained by the SCP Foundation, including SCP-2855, SCP-4366, and SCP-111. They range from useful to whimsical to downright destructive, and the motives behind each invention are currently unknown. SCP-1550 is just one in a long line of anomalous toys from the shadowy toymaker. And so, like they have with so many other Wondertainment products, the research staff at the Foundation decided to perform some exploratory tests on these supposed custom pets. First, one SCP-1550 egg was placed in a tank of seawater and left to hatch. When it did, it produced a specimen with gills all along its upper back, behind its eyes, an array of flat and broad tails it could use to swim efficiently. Further examination of the creature revealed that it excreted special mucus to protect its eyes from the salt water, and a swim bladder that was discovered during dissection. The skin of the creature was a mottled blue, giving it natural camouflage in its seawater environment. Next, the team decided to place an egg in fresh water and see what different adaptations were produced. A tank was filled with water from a river behind the testing site, and the egg was placed inside until it hatched. Interestingly, this specimen of SCP-1550 did not possess any gills, suggesting similar circumstances would not necessarily produce the same adaptations. Instead, this specimen had enlarged lungs and a thin, streamlined body for more efficient movement. Next, the team prepared a terrarium meant to simulate the ecosystem of a temperate forest and placed the next egg inside. When it hatched, it produced a specimen of SCP-1550 covered in a layer of brown fur, with a ridged underbelly resembling that of a snake. It also had a tail consisting of large tentacles. Along the ridged underbelly, there was a smooth patch of skin with the Dr. Wondertainment logo printed, like a tattoo. The team prepared a different terrarium that simulated a desert ecosystem and allowed an egg to hatch inside. The resulting specimen was cold-blooded, tan in color to blend in with the sand, and skilled at burrowing quickly to protect itself from outside stressors. It was also, notably, 1 centimeter larger than the previous specimens. The final terrarium was made to simulate the environment of an average urban apartment. The egg that hatched inside produced a creature with leathery skin and eyes placed similarly to those of a chameleon. The demeanor of the specimen was noticeably friendlier than its predecessors, and it acted more like a domesticated house pet than a wild animal. Its most impressive adaptation was its method of eating. Behind the specimen's jaw, there were strands of baleen like those found in whales, which allowed the creature to filter feed on dust and crumbs from the terrarium floor. After these experiments proved successful, the research team decided to test the eggs in more extreme environments. One egg was placed in a vat of molten iron. It promptly burst into flames and was completely destroyed. The head researcher responded, "Well, what did you expect to happen?" Which seems like a fair point. The next egg was placed inside a vacuum chamber, which was then depressurized. The egg promptly exploded, covering the inside of the chamber in an unidentifiable slime. These 2 less than successful experiments led the research team to the conclusion that SCP-1550 eggs cannot survive in conditions that would be uninhabitable for any other animal. There are limits to the creature's adaptability, but what would happen to an egg placed in a hostile environment filled with something recognizable? A vacuum chamber was filled with seawater, and an egg was placed inside. The chamber was then pressurized to 15,750 psi. This time, the egg was not destroyed, but instead was able to successfully hatch. The resulting SCP-1550 specimen bore a heavy resemblance to several deep-sea creatures, most notably the anglerfish. Like the anglerfish, the creature had a bioluminescent lure dangling from its forehead. It also had gills, dark gray-blue skin, flat and webbed fins, and enlarged eyes twice the size of those found on other specimens. Its teeth were sharp and ridged, similar to those of a shark. The head researcher made a note on this portion of the experiment log, asking, "Just what kind of child Dr. Wondertainment is trying to sell these things to that they could live in conditions where a creature like that could be kept as a pet?" All adult specimens of SCP-1550 are kept in a sealed 5 meter by 5 meter terrarium, which simulates desert conditions. This terrarium is monitored via electronic surveillance, and each of the specimens is implanted with a tracking device. If one or more of the specimens escapes, the area is locked down until all of the creatures have been captured and placed back in their terrarium. All SCP-1550 eggs are kept in their packaging unless being used for testing. As the Foundation does not want the population of adult specimens to exceed 20 at any given time, excess specimens are terminated. Honestly, that makes me a little sad. I'd be happy to take them in if the research team can't keep them. But I digress. Having a pet is a big responsibility, and some people just can't handle the risks and rewards that come with caring for an animal, especially one that can become an accidental weapon if you're not careful. If your child is begging you for a pet, maybe you should start them out with a goldfish first. A goldfish never burnt the house down, though I suppose there's a first time for everything.
A child is sleeping happily in their bed, dreaming of Christmas morning. What they don't hear, as they sleep, is the sound of SCP-4666 slipping into their room. SCP-4666 watches the child for just a moment before reaching into a giant bag. Hi, I'm Dr. Bob, and this is SCP-4666, also known as the Yule Man. SCP-4666 is thought to be a single humanoid entity, but one that has been alive for an incredibly long time. Those who have come into contact with SCP-4666 and lived to tell the tale describe him as being very tall, between 2 and 2.3 meters. He also appears to be very old and very thin. He always appears without clothing, even when the weather is below freezing and would be much too cold for any normal human to survive. Though the true extent of his anomalous properties are still unknown, SCP-4666 seems to be able to travel instantaneously to any location on Earth above the 40th line of north latitude, and may actually be able to travel anywhere on the planet. Encounters with SCP-4666 have only been reported during a very specific time of year, a period of 12 nights running from the night of December 21st to the early morning hours of January 2nd. This period is known as SCP-4666's active phase,
and the encounters with the anomalous humanoid creature have been termed Weissnacht events. During these events, SCP-4666 appears at family dwellings, all of which, so far, have a few things in common. 1. They are all isolated in rural areas. 2. They are in locations with snow that covers the area for the duration of the event. And 3. They are all home to a family with at least one child under the age of 8. In places that match all of those characteristics, Weissnacht events sometimes occur and always follow the same basic progression. During the first 7 nights, the children will report seeing a strange figure within the vicinity of the home. The entity will seem to be watching the home from a distance, such as from across a field or from the edge of a nearby forest. Some children have even reported waking up at night to find SCP-4666 watching them sleep through a window. On nights 8 through 11, other family members will report hearing the entity, such as footsteps on the roof or in the attic. A bad-smelling odor will also start to be noticed in the house, but no source of the smell is ever found. These strange occurrences will often lead the family to think their house may be haunted, or that they're being terrorized by a madman. Finally, on the 12th night, one of 2 scenarios can occur. In the first, which happens roughly 15% of the time, families will often report that they heard footsteps during the night inside of their house, but there is never any sign of forced entry like broken windows or doors. In the morning, the children will find crudely made toys at the foot of their beds. For the lucky ones, this is the end of the Weissnacht event for them. The roughly 85% who experience the other scenario are considerably less lucky. In the vast majority of cases, the 12th night is a horrible experience. SCP-4666 still enters the home on the final night, but rather than leave presents for the children, it incapacitates the family and moves them all into a single room, where it proceeds to kill them one by one in view of the rest of the family. The exact method of killing varies from event to event, but there's almost always an element of torture that occurs before they are finally killed, and this torture may serve a ritualistic purpose. The entire family is killed except for one of the children who is under the age of 8. This child is instead abducted and placed into a giant bag SCP-4666 carries with it. SCP-4666's existence was first noted in 1974 by the Foundation's then-new Anomalous Signature Recognition Program, which alerted the Foundation to several suspiciously similar home invasions and murders that occurred throughout the Northern Hemisphere on the night of January 1st. Further research uncovered evidence for what was most likely other Weissnacht events every single year, dating back all the way to the late 18th century, with there being, on average, a little more than 3 events per year. And there's even been evidence of references to what may be SCP-4666, dating all the way back to the 1st and 2nd century AD. Identical fingerprints have been found at all of the houses which match the conditions for Weissnacht events, and have been matched to a recovered partial print from all the way back in 1873. These fingerprints have characteristics that don't match any known human fingerprints, and the human-like white hairs that have also been recovered do not appear to contain human DNA, or any DNA at all for that matter. In the rare Weissnacht events where SCP-4666 does not murder the family and gifts are left behind, the gifts are anything but normal. The gifts, known as SCP-4666As, appear to be made from the bodies of children that SCP-4666 abducted from other homes. In one case, from 2018, at the home of a family in Alaska, a life-size doll made from the body of a female child was left behind. The doll was wearing a dirty dress made from sewn-together rags that was in some places sewn directly to the skin. Her mouth had been sewn shut and painted red with human blood. Another child's fingernails had been glued over her own, and 3 fingers were missing completely. The scalp had also been replaced with another child's scalp and hair like a crude wig. Worst of all, both eyes had been removed and replaced with 2 stones which were painted to look like eyes. But most frightening of all was that the child who had been turned into a doll was somehow still alive Authorities took the girl to a hospital where she was able to give a brief interview. She explained that the man who abducted her had killed her parents before putting her into a giant bag where there were other children too. SCP-4666 took the children somewhere deep below the earth in a cave system full of ice and bones. There, they were forced to make crude toys until they couldn't go on any longer, at which point they became toys. The girl, now known to be Ekaterina Morozova, had been abducted 2 years previously in a known Weissnacht event. She survived for only 18 hours after being discovered. An autopsy revealed many terrible injuries, and the cause of death was found to be from severe, sustained malnourishment. SCP-4666 has been classified as Keter and is currently not contained. The Foundation monitors web traffic and law enforcement channels for any evidence of SCP-4666 activity, and especially any potential Weissnacht events, such as cases of stalking reported during the 12-night active phase or other strange phenomena at houses with young children. Should a Weissnacht event be suspected to be in progress, the nearest containment task force is dispatched to attempt to contain SCP-4666 using the standard PDP-8 humanoid first contact protocols. So far, no such containment attempt has been successful.
The young man watches as the lily-white coffin is lowered into the ground. He's surprised at the dryness of his eyes, seeing as it's his own mother being buried. But now isn't the time for questions. When the dirt is piled on and the small service comes to an end, the young man is the last to leave. Other than the eulogy, he never says a single word to anyone. She'd been difficult towards the end. He'd cared for his mother until her disease had made it so that she wasn't really his mother anymore. And then for another 2 years after that, things had been said and done that he wished he could remove from his memories of her. But the past is forever set. As he looks up from his mother's gravestone, he notices something strange in the distance, perhaps 30 feet away from him. A little girl, maybe about 10 years old, in a school uniform, standing behind another gravestone. She's wearing a worn-looking plastic pig mask and carrying a dirty rag doll. The young man stares into the dark eye holes of her mask for a moment, wondering if he's really seeing this or if she's a figment of his imagination brought on by stress and grief. Then he blinks and she's gone. For a second, he feels a frightening sentence looping through the dark recesses of his mind. You're starting to lose it already. A few years ahead of schedule. You'd make your mother proud. The young man shakes his head and leaves for home. Of course, he might see things on a day like this. The mind does funny things when it's in a state of extreme emotional distress. It was perfectly natural that he'd see strange things on a day like this. But that little girl in the pig mask really did look real. Arriving home is a surreal experience. It's the first time in a long time that he's truly felt alone, like a child lost in a vast and unfamiliar space. Something about it just felt wrong. He makes himself a microwave meal and eats it silently in the kitchen. The place is so quiet, no panicked yells or cries of pain. He sighs and looks out the kitchen window as he washes the dishes, and in the distance, he sees another strange sight. A young boy, 12 years old or so, standing out in the cold, dark woods next to his house. He's wearing only swimming trunks and a worn-looking plastic mouse mask. A rag doll hangs limply from his thin, pale arm, just like the one the girl in the graveyard was holding. The young man's first instinct is to go out and help the child. After all, it's a cold night. He could catch his death out there. But with another blink, the child is gone. Just trees in the dark. He breathes a ragged sigh and takes an aspirin. Something must really be wrong with him if he keeps seeing strange children with animal faces out there. He trudges upstairs, hoping that maybe he'll get some sleep tonight and feel a little better in the morning. Shadows dart in the corners of his eyes, but he pays them no mind. He can't trust anything he sees today. He pauses for a moment in front of the room where his mother used to sleep. It looks cavernous without her tiny form nestled in the bed. He thinks about how she'd last been in that same room a little more than a week earlier. He sighs, turns off the light, and goes to bed. That night, the young man has strange dreams. He feels like a tiny fish at the deepest, darkest point of the ocean, watching huge black shapes loom and shift around him. He's afraid. He feels like he's being watched. The sudden spike of terror jolts him out of his sleep, and that's when he sees them. The children in the animal masks,
7 of them now. They stand around his bed, hand in hand, like they're playing some kind of game, but in dead silence. Each one has a rag doll sitting patiently at their feet. Logically, he should be more afraid upon seeing them. It's the strangest experience of his life. And yet, he feels an odd sense of empty calm settle over him, like a warm blanket. His eyes close, and sleep takes him again. When the young man wakes up the next morning, something doesn't feel right. He's already dismissed the strange children with the animal masks and the dolls as a figment of his imagination, a half-waking dream. But what he can't dismiss is the numbness in his fingers and toes. It's like he'd spent all night sleeping in the cold outside, despite his room being perfectly warm. Perhaps he's coming down with something. Other strange things start to happen over the next few days. He makes himself a sandwich, and as he bites into it, he notices he can't taste a thing. Come to think of it, he really can't smell that much either. Could this be a cold? The flu? Something worse? Also, he just can't shake the feeling that he isn't alone in the house. It's as if he can feel a presence there with him. And not just one presence, but multiple. Could it have something to do with those strange dreams and hallucinations, the children in the masks? He suppresses the thoughts, not wanting to consider their implication. He can scarcely dare to ponder what's worse, that there really are strange little children in masks creeping around his home, making him sick, or that he's losing his mind, just like his mother. He puts it out of his mind, but every so often, when he happens to glance out of the window, he can't help but see little shapes moving in the distance. When he watches the TV or tries to listen to music to distract himself, he notices that he needs to turn up the volume more than he ever did before. His hearing is getting worse. Could this be some kind of sinus thing? It's the only rational explanation, but it can be hard to apply a rational explanation when what's happening is inherently irrational. Several days later, after getting out of bed in the morning and standing in front of the bathroom mirror, the young man notices something is different. It's his skin. It's a pale, almost creamy color now, like all the life and vitality has been leached out of it. But it's not just that. He looks closer at his face in the mirror. His eyes. Have they always looked like that? Were they always that shade of dark, murky brown? Maybe it's his addled mind, but he can swear something is different, like the ground is shifting underneath his feet. That's when he notices something in the corner of the mirror, a little boy with dark blue overalls and a grinning cat mask. He just stands there, watching. The young man turns, hoping to finally see one of these strange children up close, but of course, there's nothing there. Over the following days, it all gets worse. 2 weeks since the funeral, and his senses of taste and smell haven't returned. His hearing gets worse by the day, until he's almost entirely deaf. The sightings of the children don't stop, but they're harder to make out. Over time, his vision starts to blur, and no matter how hard he rubs his eyes, they never clear. He stubs his toe, cracking the toenail open from tip to base, and he doesn't even notice. Little by little, feeling itself is starting to leave him. He doesn't even notice until the day he decides to chop some carrots for a soup he's making, hoping in vain that this one might be the meal he can finally taste. But his vision is getting so blurry now, he can barely... The knife cuts into his palm. It takes him a second to even register, because there's no pain and no blood. He stares at the clean wound in his palm with detached fascination, trying to work out the shapes in front of him, to make sense of it all. What are those thin white strands sticking out of the cut? He grabs the edge of the skin, though it doesn't look much like skin now, more like pale, ragged fabric, and he peels it back. No blood, no sinew, no flesh, just puffy white stuffing underneath. He's in bed, and has been for a few days now. He can't taste, smell, hear, feel, or even see. All he can do is think in the dark. He's confused and afraid. He wants his mother, but she's long gone. On the outside, he's shrinking away, drawing into himself. He can't move or talk as he gets smaller and smaller. They walk in through the walls, the children in masks, ready to receive their new toy. The young man is nothing more. All that's left is another rag doll with a pair of brown button eyes laying on the bed. A little boy in a rabbit mask steps forward and picks it up. He stares at it for a moment before the children leave, and the house is empty once more. This is the kind of unpleasant, anomalous experience you can expect from a close encounter with SCP-747, aptly nicknamed Children and Dolls. SCP-747 specifically refers to the phenomenon of these strange, anomalous children wearing animal masks. Studies have shown that, masks aside, All of these children are identical to children who have proven to have died around the time that their anomalous counterparts first manifested. This leads us to the working theory that the SCP-747 instances are spectral manifestations of the children they once were, twisted somehow by the unifying force of SCP-747. This is a theory supported by several pieces of unsettling information. Agents from the SCP Foundation disguised as grief counselors conducted interviews with the bereaved parents of each of the deceased children, and through these heart-wrenching interviews, they were able to discover that each of the children who died had possessed a doll that they loved very dearly. So much so that the dolls were each buried with them, because on some level, the thought of separating them from this last comfort of the mortal world was too painful for the parents to bear. Given the preoccupation with dolls exhibited by SCP-747 instances, the Foundation found these facts to be highly illuminating. The physicality of SCP-747 instances, or rather, the lack thereof, also points towards the theory of them being powerful spectral manifestations. They are able to phase through solid surfaces of up to 10 centimeters in thickness and can sometimes have difficulty in holding solid objects due to their partially solid nature. They live mysterious and lonely lives on a plane of reality adjacent to our own, and they have never been seen to speak, though it's likely that they do have some form of communication with one another. Outside of individuals they're directly targeting, the SCP-747 children show little interest in other non-anomalous humans. They mainly seem to occupy themselves with their dolls and with each other. It is unknown to what extent the children are truly sentient, but they do appear to have some form of self-comprehension, manifesting in an awareness of the space they take up and their surroundings, which keeps them from bumping into things as they walk. But of course, their spectrality is hardly the most unsettling or eye-catching feature of SCP-747. No, the real danger of SCP-747 is the fact that they're able to turn human beings into dolls, a process which takes a matter of seconds to instill, but 21 torturous days to finally take effect. In order to begin this process, the children will select a human that intrigues them, perhaps one that would fit in nicely with their collection. The Foundation isn't currently aware whether there are any fixed criteria for victim selection or if it's just a matter of wrong place at the wrong time. When the time is right and their selection is secure, they'll lock hands and form a ring around the human in question for 5 to 7 seconds. This is all it takes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seconds, and you're already at the point of no return. After completing this brief ritual, the children will go their separate ways, and the process will begin to take hold. This is why it's so imperative for the SCP Foundation to keep a lid on SCP-747's activities. While there's no cure for the process once the ritual is done, it is possible to prevent the ritual from being completed in the first place by escaping the circle and leaving the SCP-747 children. However, they have cognito-hazardous measures against this, with many victims reporting a sense of blankness or thoughtlessness while within the circle. They induce a placid state of mind to prevent resistance from the horrible fate they're bestowing. The transformation doesn't incur any immediate symptoms. However, after 15 minutes or so, the victim will begin to experience numbness in the extremities, much like the kind caused by cold weather or poor blood circulation. Symptoms will gradually worsen over the next 21 days, though if the victim enters a state of chronic stress or anxiety, this process could potentially shorten to as little as 10 days. The conversion can often be neatly divided into 3 distinct stages. Stage 1. Loss of minor senses. The most frightening aspect of this initial stage of transformation is the fact that many of its symptoms could easily be written off as that of more common minor ailments. The senses of smell, taste, and hearing will begin to dampen and then disappear entirely, in what may at first seem like a severe cold. The victim may express a sense of distress at their condition at this stage, but will remain largely mentally stable. Any deviations from that expectation into more extreme mental instability should be taken as a sign of an accelerated transformation rate. However, towards the end of Stage 1, a more pronounced change will start to take hold. The victim will notice a slow shift of their eye color and skin tone to reflect the colors of the doll, though this is only the beginning. Stage 2. Loss of major senses. Over the next 13 days, the victims will begin to lose their senses of sight and touch, resulting in extreme mental instability and stress. The victims may attempt to perform gruesome experiments on themselves, trying to rediscover feelings in their body, only to become more unstable upon realizing that these senses are gone for good. At this stage, the frightening anomalous physical changes will become even more pronounced. The skin of the victim will take on a rough, ragged quality as it transforms from normal skin into a variety of fabrics. The internal organs are also slowly transformed into a patchwork of synthetic stuffings, and even the victim's eyes will start to harden into buttons. However, the victim will remain alive throughout this entire grim process, even as their autonomy over their own body rapidly fades away. Stage 3. Full transformation. Within 24 hours of entering Stage 3, the victim is fully and irreparably turned into a doll. The SCP-747 children will treat this doll just like they treat any others, and if ever a doll created by the influence of SCP-747 is destroyed, they will show greater interest in humans once again, until a new target for conversion is selected. The SCP Foundation currently has 7 SCP-747 specimens in containment. SCP-747-01 is an approximately 7-year-old male wearing a set of blue pajamas and a zebra mask. SCP-747-02 is an approximately 12-year-old male wearing swimming trunks and a mouse mask. SCP-747-03 is an approximately 10-year-old female wearing a uniform typical of an expensive private school and a pig mask. SCP-747-04 is an approximately 14-year-old male wearing a winter coat and a rabbit mask. SCP-747-05 is an approximately 12-year-old female wearing a striped sari and a giraffe mask. SCP-747-06 is an approximately 5-year-old girl with a bright pink dress typical of a beauty pageant contestant and a goat mask. And finally, SCP-747-07 is an approximately 9-year-old male wearing blue overalls and a cat mask. Interestingly, he was also found with a physical note containing a short story about a mother searching for her child in the afterlife. Interestingly, the mother of this particular entity, before becoming an SCP-747 instance, is believed to have died in childbirth. All of the SCP-747 instances that the Foundation has in containment are kept in a single containment chamber, 30 meters by 10 meters in size, with concrete walls at least 15 centimeters thick to prevent the children from phasing through them. It is mandatory that any unusual behaviors by the children are reported to a superior immediately. If the children seem to take an interest in any members of the staff that research, guard, or attend to them, that member of personnel must be transferred to a different project immediately. The children are allowed a total of 25 dolls to keep them placated, excluding ones created by their anomalous influence, and the SCP Foundation only permits their dolls to be temporarily removed from the containment chamber for examination and repair. Any staff members who begin to show the previously described symptoms of anomalous SCP-747 influence are to be quarantined and contained separately. Task Force 747-B8 remains on call in the event of a containment breach to handle tracking, capture, and containment. Due to the incredibly volatile and dangerous nature of interfacing with SCP-747, Level 3 staff and above are only able to come into contact with them if the situation absolutely demands it. SCP-747 has been given the containment object class Euclid due to their phasing abilities and unpredictable nature. After all, who could ever really know what's going on behind those masks? But there's one more detail about SCP-747 that is perhaps the most frightening of all. There is evidence that suggests that the victims who have been turned into SCP-747 dolls may not actually be dead. In fact, they may still remain conscious, cut off from all their senses, slowly descending further into madness.
Ouch! The boy on the bus turns around. Did someone pull out one of his hairs? He looks around, but the girl in the seat behind him is staring out the window. She's so quiet and always keeps to herself, he doesn't think it possibly could have been her. The boy turns back around, wondering if he just imagined it, unable to see the small smile forming on the girl's face. The bus stops, and the girl practically sprints off and up the sidewalk to her house. She runs past her mother without saying hello and goes straight into her bedroom, closing and locking the door behind her. She sits at her desk, opens a drawer, and pulls out a small bag. She reaches into the bag and takes out a folded piece of paper. Congratulations on your purchase of a genuine Knotty Stalker. Do you love someone but they won't give you the time of day? Do you wish you could hear what they say about you behind their back? Well, wonder no more. Using this fantabulous product, you can keep track of your loved one's every move, their every word. The girl imagines herself watching a tiny version of the boy on the bus right here on her desk, seeing everything that he does, listening to his secret thoughts and desires. If only she knew him better, then she'd have the confidence to talk to him and could get him to like her as much as she liked him. She reaches into the bag and pulls out the Knotty Stalker. It doesn't look like much, just a little doll made from a woven and twisted length of red string. She looks back to the instructions. All you have to do is get a single hair from the head of the object of your desires, slip it under a loose string in our Knotty Stalker, and see what you've been missing. The girl reaches into her pocket and takes out a single strand of hair. She holds the hair up to the light, looking at it. If this works, it will mean all of her dreams coming true. Just like the instructions said to do, she takes the hair and slides it under a string on the doll's body. She sets the doll down on her desk and waits. And waits. And nothing happens. She picks up the instructions again, turning them over, but there's nothing else except another wonderful product brought to you by blah blah blah. Where were the rest of the instructions on how to get it to work? Why wasn't the doll coming to life? What a piece of junk. Wait.
Huh?
What was that? The girl leans in close. Is the doll breathing? She's startled as the doll turns its head over its shoulder, seemingly looking right at her, or rather, right through her. "Coming, Mom," the doll shouts before standing up. It starts to walk in place, looking like it is opening invisible doors, and then sitting down on a chair that she can't see. It looks like it's pretending to eat dinner. The girl's eyes widen. The doll is alive. It's really alive. It's actually showing what the boy is doing right now. The Knotty Stalker has worked. The girl is fascinated by watching the little doll that gives her a peek into her crush's life. She skips her own dinner so she can watch him finish his. She watches as he sits, probably watching TV, takes a shower, and gets ready for bed. It may all just be a little doll acting it out, but it feels like she is there with him. She watches the doll sleep for hours before falling finally asleep herself, her head resting on the desk next to him. The next morning, she passes by the boy and his friend sitting together on the bus and goes to the very back. She gets as low in the seat as she can so no one can see her, and takes out the doll, holding it up to her ear. She listens to one side of the conversation as the boy talks about the action movie he watched last night, Weapon of Mass Extinction. The boy talks about how much he liked it and how it's his new favorite movie. This was perfect. It's exactly what she needed. The next day in school, as the boy is putting things into his locker, the girl approaches. She pretends to trip and drops her books in front of him, the books scattering on the floor in front of him. The boy helps her pick them up and notices the DVD she dropped, Weapons of Mass Extinction. She explains that she brought her favorite movie to school to loan it to a friend. What a coincidence that they both happen to love the same film. The boy and the girl, bonding over their love of low-budget sci-fi action films, start spending more and more time together. No one has ever understood him the way that she does. It's as if she has known him for years, even though they've only been friends for a few days. Things move quickly, though, and before long, he realizes that he is having romantic feelings for the girl. This is all the girl had ever wanted, and it's all thanks to the Knotty Stalker. Things are going so well, in fact, that she imagines she won't even need it much longer. But then, something strange happens. She is sure she heard the boy tell his friend that he loved baseball, but when she brings up the idea of going to a game together, the boy looks at her like she was crazy. He hated baseball. After that, things seem to change. The boy is still so nice when they are together. Now it sounds like he is talking about her behind her back. She worries that she has been wrong this whole time, that he has just been messing with her. This stupid doll isn't making her dreams come true. It's making her life a nightmare. But wait, who is the boy talking to? She leans in close to listen. Is he with another girl? Listening to one side of the conversation, she hears the boy tell someone that this is all just a big joke, a prank he is pulling on some dumb girl. Are they? No, they can't be. Kissing? The girl is in a white-hot rage. She can't believe he would do this to her, after she was nothing but perfect to him. She throws the doll across her room. She's going to confront the boy and whoever he's with. She'll teach him a lesson. She'll teach both of them a lesson. It's starting to rain as the girl gets her bike out and starts to ride to where she knows he is, the spot that was supposed to be their own special place. Cars pass close by on the narrow road, splashing her with water, but she doesn't care. She finally reaches the picnic spot where he took her just a few days ago, and she sees a car parked nearby. It must belong to the evil seductress he is with. The girl glares at the car. She grits her teeth until they feel like they might crack. Her fists are clenched so tight that she can't tell if it's the rain or blood from her fingernails digging in that she feels running down her palms. But she doesn't care. She's going to show both of them what happens when you break someone's heart. She takes a step towards the car, and the car that struck her slams on its brakes. The driver gets out and rushes towards her. It's the boy. Her boy. The older couple who were stopped on the side of the road with a flat tire run over to help. The boy gets down next to her and cradles her head in his lap, and they have one last moment to look into each other's eyes before the light fades from hers. Unfortunately for all involved, their lives would never be the same. But how could they have known that they were the victims of an encounter with an anomaly that, while small, is extremely dangerous? One that is known to the SCP Foundation as SCP-693, the Knotty Stalker. SCP-693 are multiple humanoid-shaped dolls, measuring roughly 18 centimeters in length, each made from a single string that is either red, blue, yellow, or black, with onyx beads for eyes. Their clothing will vary in color and style, and seems to have no bearing on the properties of the doll. The string doll will behave exactly as one would expect, showing no anomalous properties at all, until the owner takes the steps that are spelled out in the instructions that always accompany SCP-693. The instruction sheet congratulates the owner on their acquisition of a Knotty Stalker and explains that in order to use it, a single hair from another person must be inserted into a loop of its string, at which point, the doll will attune to that person. The doll will then come alive, mimicking the actions of the hair's owner in real time, including their speech. The doll will perfectly portray the attuned individual for 9 days, after which point it will become unreliable. The exact way in which SCP-693 begins changing the speech and actions depends on the color of its base string, but in all cases, its end goal is to drive the current owner of the doll to their death. SCP-693 goes about this by feeding inaccurate information to the owner. Dolls made of red string try to send their owner into increasingly violent fits of rage. Dolls comprised of blue string try to depress the owner and lead them to self-harm. Yellow dolls want to make their owners attempt unwanted acts of physical love, and black dolls encourage their owners to engage in activities and place themselves in situations that are dangerous. Interestingly, SCP-693 will attune not just to the living, but to the deceased as well. When a dead person's hair is placed in a loop of string, the Knotty Stalker will come to life, just as it does when a living person's is used. But instead of acting out the speech and movements of the person, the attuned doll will claim to be the deceased person and offer to act as a spiritual guide to the owner. But just like with a living person, at the 9-day mark, SCP-693 will become unreliable and will attempt to lead the owner down a path that results in their death. Once an SCP-693 instance is successful in causing its owner's death, a new doll instance will appear and be found on the owner's body. Several of these dolls have been recovered from Knotty Stalker victims, and currently, the Foundation has 7 red instances, 10 blue instances, 5 yellow instances, and 1 black instance in its possession. All instances of SCP-693 contained by the Foundation were originally classified as safe and kept in Containment Locker 12C-K, but following the events of Incident 693-E, that classification was revisited. During this incident, a researcher returned a Knotty Stalker doll to its Containment Locker, but in a lapse of judgment that went against Foundation protocols, they forgot to remove the hair that had been placed in the doll. When the locker was next opened, the dolls were observed to have all been moved. They were found in a circle around the accidentally still attuned doll, which had been crucified upside down on the wall of the locker. It is unknown where the dolls acquired nails. After this incident, a camera was placed inside of the locker, and the results were surprising, to say the least. It turns out that SCP-693 instances come to life when they are not observed, even when they aren't attuned. While they have not yet been observed engaging in violent acts against each other, the camera has captured the Knotty Stalkers appearing to reenact the final 30 minutes of their last owner's life over and over. Following this new information, all instances of Knotty Stalker dolls were moved to their own separate 25 by 25 by 25 centimeter steel containers within the containment locker, and their classification was upgraded to Euclid. SCP-693 is one of the rare anomalies where the Foundation actually has quite a good idea as to where it originates, and it was very easy to discover as well. Provided that they aren't a deception, the instructions that appear with each instance of SCP-693 are quite explicit about where they come from. After congratulating the owner on their acquisition and explaining how the doll works, the instructions close by extolling the Knotty Stalker as yet another wonderful product brought to you by the Factory. For those unaware, The factory is a place with a long connection to the Foundation, though the details on that will have to wait for another file exploration. All you need to know now is that the factory produces a huge amount of anomalies, and it appears that SCP-693 is one of them. There are theories that the dolls may have been produced as an espionage tool, but as for why their primary purpose seems to be driving their owner to their death, well, that we simply don't know.
The mobile task agent weeps in terror as the nightmarish cartoon figures surround him in the middle of the bright pink, whimsical town pulled out of your childhood fever dreams. Deformed childhood beasts drink greedily from a fountain overflowing with blood. But the agent doesn't fear them. He fears Mr. Hister, the huge looming figure in the yellow cloak, brimming with tendrils, and that awful face beneath the hood, smiling its rotting smile. All around them, children stand trance-like for the ceremony, ready to receive their final judgment, as up above, a door made of mirror floats, surrounded by the suspended floating bodies of the people who weren't so lucky. Mr. Hister leans in. He's got a question to ask, and if the MTF agent can't answer it, something horrible beyond imagination is going to happen to him. That's just how it is when you're dealing with SCP-4853. SCP-5853 refers to a line of packaged Taffy candies. Each package contains 2 candies, one blue with a raspberry flavor and one red with a cherry flavor. The blue candy appears to have no anomalous effects or adverse effects at all, aside from getting stuck in one's teeth. However, the red candy is a different story. Anyone who consumes the red candy and recites a key phrase will be teleported to an extra-dimensional shape, seemingly identical to the location of Ticky Taffy Town, a 90s-era television show that advertised the candy and has been designated SCP-5853-A. It was the UIU, a branch of the FBI specialized in investigating paranormal occurrences, who first identified the anomaly after they noticed a correlation between the airing of SCP-5853-A episodes and the disappearances of children. The show and its corresponding candy have been linked to approximately 3,500 child disappearances between the years of 1994 and 1999. As the UIU looked into unexplained disappearances during these years, a peculiar pattern began to emerge among several cases. The missing child was most recently seen in or entering a kitchen pantry. The only evidence left behind was a pile of open Ticky Taffy wrappers, specifically the blue raspberry variety. Shortly before their disappearance, the child was watching an episode of the show featuring the character Mr. Hister, and the missing child's parent could hear the show's theme music just before the child vanished. After a UIU operative's child joined the list of missing kids, the case was turned over to the SCP Foundation, along with all of the UIU's findings up to that point. Though episodes of Ticky Taffy Town can no longer be accessed by the public or by anyone outside of specific Foundation-approved testing, there are descriptions of the show's 5 main characters, or entities, included in the official file. They range from standard children's entertainment fare to imagery that is deeply disturbing. First, there is the fatherly, patient Mr. Squibbles, a bipedal humanoid with the head of a plush octopus and a wardrobe consisting of khaki trousers and a red sweater vest. He is responsible for imparting each episode's lesson. Next, there is Mrs. Bobble, a stereotypical clown with blue hair, white makeup, a red nose, and oversized, multicolored clothing. She acts as the questioner of the episode's theme or lesson, raising these questions with Mr. Squibbles. The source of mischief in Ticky Taffy Town is Kizzywink, a small entity resembling a bipedal feline with humanoid hands and an oversized head. Though the entity is mischievous, it is also benign and largely childlike in its behavior. Kizzywink has a companion named Franzipans, a small, round, plushy avian with a hammer in place of its beak. Acting as an annoying sidekick to Kizzywink, the entity will fly around the screen and hit the other entities with its hammer beak as a form of slapstick comedy. And then there is the infamous Mr. Hister. This entity is not depicted as overtly hostile, but its appearance is the most troubling in the show. This humanoid entity stands approximately 2.3 meters tall and wears a long, golden yellow robe with a hood. The entity propels itself through the world with tentacles that emerge from beneath its cloak. any attempts to produce an official description of the entity's face have proven difficult, due to the notable video distortion effect caused when the entity enters the frame. The closest current description of its face describes it as resembling a misshapen, tumorous human skull. A standard Mr. Hister episode of SCP-4853-A begins like most children's shows, with vivid colors, pleasant lighting, and cheerful music, as the main cast teaches standard lessons such as how to tie your shoes, why it's important to brush your teeth, and the value of honesty. When Mr. Hister enters the frame, however, everything changes. The video quality dulls, the colors become oversaturated to the point of becoming almost nausea-inducing, and the contrast decreases dramatically. The visuals aren't the only thing that change in Mr. Hister's presence. The subject matter also shifts in tone, as Mr. Hister torments the rest of the characters with nihilistic and distressing lessons such as, "Your parents will soon die, and so will you," and "I feel nothing but the nothingness," or the particularly evocative, "You may not believe in the slaughter, but the slaughter believes in you." When Mr. Hister leaves the scene, he always recites this phrase, "I shall now be departing to the land of right, with the truth of red to be my might." This phrase is thought to be related to the various child disappearances attributed to the show. On January 4, 2000, lead researcher Frank Monroe conducted the first test involving SCP-4853-A. Accompanied by junior researchers Tracy Klaus and Morgan Eskew, and supervised by Ethics Committee consultant Jennifer Lamb, Monroe began the test with D-Class 643980 restrained to a detainment chair in the middle of an observation room, placed in front of a television set. D-643980 was also hooked up to standard medical equipment to measure his vitals, while the junior researchers scanned infrared, ultraviolet, and other frequency wavelengths of the television program for any anomalous activity. With this setup in place, lead researcher Monroe signaled for the test to begin. The television was switched on and began to play Ticky Taffy Town Season 1, Episode 3, the first on-screen appearance of Mr. Hister. As the episode began, everything proceeded normally, aside from a small increase in Hume levels. As it progressed, however, the D-Class became increasingly agitated, his heart rate and perspiration increasing. He demanded to know why the show was chosen, explaining that he had childhood memories of the program. His younger brother used to watch the show all the time, until he disappeared. Upon hearing this, Ethics Committee consultant Jennifer Lamb became visibly distressed, but advised the research team to proceed with the test in spite of this unforeseen emotional component. After the episode finished, D-643980 was freed from his torso restraints and given a microphone, earpiece, receiver, and shoulder camera mount. He was then given a package of SCP-5853, at which point he remarked that he ate them as a child, but only ever ate the raspberry flavor, while his brother preferred the cherry. He was instructed to eat the cherry piece, then recite the phrase, "Flesh is not the truth." At this point, the theme song of Ticky Taffy Town filled the room, and the D-Class vanished from sight, disappearing from the observation room altogether. Dr. Monroe was able to maintain communication with D-643980 via the microphone and receiver, and the research team monitored his video feed. The D-Class began in a dark place, with one single stream of light splitting the center field of view. After some resistance, he continued into the unknown, stumbling out of Mr. Squibble's treasure chest. Upon exiting the chest, the larger landscape could be seen, an exact replica of the Ticky Taffy Town set, with a blank white backdrop covering any areas not usually seen by the audience. As the members of the main cast, with the exception of Mr. Hister, entered the area, the D-Class hid in the chest. The four chattered excitedly about an upcoming town meeting before Mr. Squibbles opened the chest and discovered the D-Class hiding inside. He was instructed to engage with the entities until the Foundation could come up with an appropriate extraction plan. The D-Class became distressed and swore, prompting Mrs. Bobble to turn a glowing red until Mr. Squibbles calmed her down. Kizzy Wink asked the D-Class his name, and he answered that it was Davy. At this point, the entities instructed Davy to follow them to the town meeting, where he would be their esteemed guest. Together, they left the house, entering an area made up of the miniature town from the show's opening sequence, only grown to full scale. In the background was the same vacant white backdrop, as well as seemingly infinite copies of the same town landscape. Davy and the group followed a long road toward a cobblestone town square. As the research team watched the video feed, they could see that other pathways in the background were occupied by their own versions of the main cast of characters, all walking toward the same central location. These groups were accompanied, much to the horror of the research team, by small children. Each of the houses along the path was printed with a number corresponding to an episode of Ticky Taffy Town that featured Mr. Hister. According to the research team's calculations, this amounted to 31 episodes of the show that were actively able to steal children. Dr. Monroe suggested sending in a mobile task force, but Jennifer Lamb refused to sign off on the request, concerned about the unknown nature of the location and the potential ramifications of sending MTF members inside. While the research team was debating about the next steps, Davy and his new friends reached the town square. There were over 100 entities and 200 children gathered together there. Some children were weeping, others stood silently, eyes ringed with dark circles from lack of sleep. Every single one of them looked utterly terrified. The entities began to chant together, "I now arrive to the sea of sin, with the red of my flesh to offer him." A mirror-like rectangle appeared above the town square's fountain, spinning until it blurred into a black void. Then, Mr. Hister emerged from the darkness. Mr. Hister addressed the crowd, calling out, "My children, it is time to tell Mr. Hister what lesson you learned today." He selected a young girl from the crowd and asked her to recite the lesson she learned. She answered, repeating a lesson from Mr. Squibbles concerning the importance of tying one's shoes. Mr. Hister replied, "Your prize is to pass through the mirror and into the dreamlands." He lifted the girl into the air and tossed her into the mirror behind him. She screamed and disappeared. He proceeded to call up child after child, asking them to repeat the lesson that they learned. When they answered, they were tossed into the mirror. If the child couldn't remember their lesson, however, well, the less that is said about that, the better. Before long, the fountain was filled with deep red water, which the other Ticky Taffy Town entities greedily slurped up. Eventually, Mr. Hister turned to Dave, asking him what lesson he learned. Dave struggled to answer, guessing a phrase that Mr. Squibbles said, "Don't make Mrs. Bobble upset, lest you fail his hideous test." This was the wrong answer. Mr. Hister lifted Dave into the sky, where he was suspended upside down alongside other humanoid figures, one of whom he recognized as his long-lost younger brother, Jeremy. At this point, Dave stopped responding to Dr. Monroe and his research team. The camera feed remained active for 3 days, suspended upside down next to Dave's body. On screen, a continuous stream of red liquid, presumed to be blood, could be seen flowing over the lens. The feed was cut short, and Dave was presumed lost. As harrowing as it was, this initial test provided the SCP Foundation with some vital information on the inner workings of SCP-4853-A. They were able to determine that, depending on the answer a stolen victim gives, they will be able to affect their own fate. If the victim answers Mr. Hister's question, "What did you learn today?" with the intended lesson imparted in the episode, they will be passed through the mirror. What awaits them beyond it, no one but Mr. Hister knows, but it is unlikely to be anything good. If the victim answers with a lesson they learned while inside of the extra-dimensional space, they will be left to hang upside down with Dave and the rest of those suspended in the air. If they don't remember, or lie about forgetting their lesson, they will be consumed by the entities. But there is one way out. If the victim answers by repeating or summarizing Mr. Hister's darker lesson from the episode, the victim will be released from the extra-dimensional space and transported back to the place they vanished from. For example, UIU Agent Mathis's son, Thomas, reappeared in the kitchen pantry of his home on January 8, 2000, after he did just that. Following the D-Class exploration of Ticky Taffy Town, Dr. Monroe reached out to Jennifer Lamb, requesting that she reconsider her decision to decline MTF operations in the area. She refused to change her mind, telling him to scan media spaces, recall the candy, and call it a day. With the Ethics Committee refusing to approve MTF action, Dr. Monroe instead reached out to his friend, Terrence Bazarian, who occupied an MTF Alpha position. He managed, via appealing to Terrence's role as a parent, to convince him to agree to an off-books, 3-man mission into the spatial anomaly of SCP-4853-A. The small, unofficial mobile task force began its operation on January 20th, 2000. Frank Monroe served as commanding officer. Terrence Bazarian acted as team lead, Alpha, Robert Falk as right flank, Charlie, and Mohammed Al-Abi as left flank, Delta. Each member of the team was instructed to consume a piece of cherry-flavored Ticky Taffy and recite the phrase, "You may not believe in the slaughter, but the slaughter believes in you." Soon after, all 3 men were transported into the world of SCP-4853-A. They climbed out of the toy chest to find the cartoonish kitchen, the busily decorated living room, and the door to the outside area. The MTF team got to work investigating the area immediately, making note of the fact that all of the items in the house were fake, simply props for a children's show. The door to the set began to open, and the 3 MTF members hid out of sight. Monroe warned them to not, under any circumstances, engage with the entities in any way. The cast, with the exception of Mr. Hister, entered the room and began checking the area for signs of new children transported to the world. Alpha was discovered first and opened fire on Mr. Squibbles, who stumbled backward, leaking brown fluid until it collapsed. The remaining entities began to scream as the area dimmed to black. Suddenly, everything was dark and silent. The MTF feed switched to night vision as Delta, Charlie, and Alpha began to explore the area. Monroe ordered them to get to the town center as fast as possible and tell Mr. Hister the key phrase so that they could be transported back to the SCP Foundation site. As he delivered the instructions, his audio feed began to degrade until the MTF officers could no longer hear him. Left alone in Ticky Taffy Town, they had to proceed on their own. As the officers resumed motion, Franzipans flew at Charlie's head at top speed, its hammer beak colliding with the man's head and sending him careening into a nearby wall. The impact was fatal, and Agent Charlie collapsed to the ground, dead. Agents Alpha and Delta continued firing on Franzipans, and Alpha ordered Delta to head toward the door and make his way out. When he reached the door, however, Mr. Squibbles was waiting on the other side. It grabbed Agent Delta as an instance of Kizzywink used its claws to kill him. In a heroic dying act, Agent Delta pulled the pin from one of his incendiary grenades and charged at Mr. Squiggles, blowing them both up. Agent Alpha was the only one left standing, alone with Mrs. Bobble the clown. She charged at Alpha as he fired a grenade round that subdued her. Taking his moment, Alpha escaped the building, navigating his way through the pitch-black landscape. Alpha used his night vision view to navigate a narrow path toward a single light in the distance. He walked for approximately 182 minutes, at which point he remarked on the sensation of the path deepening, lengthening, and pulling him down. He began to approach the town square before everything faded to static. When Alpha's video feed returned, he was standing in front of a white wooden door. He reached out to open it and spotted a woman that appeared to be Jessie Bazarian, his wife, sitting in a rocking chair and humming a lullaby to the infant in her arms. He attempted to speak to her, but she addressed him in the manner of Mr. Hister, saying, "See the mirror, through the mirror. The mirror is the only salvation. Salvation achieved by sacrifice to he who is divine among the dreamlands. Release yourself through the mirror. Ascend through the mirror. Transcend through the mirror." Alpha screamed, collapsing to the ground. When he regained consciousness, he was face to face with Mr. Hister himself. The entity smugly asked, "Terrence, what did you learn today?" Rather than reciting the key phrase and attempting to return home, Alpha pulled the pin from his remaining grenade and let it fall to the ground. The video feed cut out, and the entire mobile task force that entered Ticky Taffy Town that day was presumed dead. 2 days later, Dr. Frank Monroe sent out the following email. "To whom it may concern and C. Miles, I regret to inform you that I am no longer able to fulfill my duties as researcher. I have come to the realization that Lamb was right, although I don't agree with her. I can't keep trying to save the world from the things we study. It's not about how far I can probe. It's for our own protection. I need to know when to call it quits. I could spend X number of dollars and X number of lives sacrificing to whatever to wherever I think, or wherever I think the mirror may bring us, who Mr. Hister might be, or the implications of a clown entity called Bobble. I could try to chase these down to their penultimate conclusion, sacrificing MTF, D-Class, and innocence alike. Lamb, she was right. God, I'm sorry, Terrence. All SCP-4853 needs is to be hidden, in the dark. I'm sorry, I'm just not made for this. Not anymore. I can no longer do this. Let me forget. Let me go back. Consider this my resignation. Respectfully, Dr. Frank Monroe. After a review by the O5 Council, Dr. Monroe's resignation request was denied. All SCP-5853 products have been publicly recalled. Any instances of SCP-5853 are to be kept in a standard containment unit in Secure Facility 64, Wing F. If any instances of SCP-5853 are discovered being sold, the sale must be intercepted immediately. Every episode of SCP-5853-A has been removed from the air, and television broadcasts and online video sites must be scanned regularly in order to prevent further spread of the materials. No Foundation personnel, including D-Class, that have or are considered having children may be assigned to SCP-5853. The SCP Foundation has attempted to uncover the identities of production staff and actors from the show, but so far, the investigation has turned up nothing but dead leads. A close analysis of the show's credits showed that, rather than a list of staff that worked on the episode, they consist of a constantly growing list of names. These names include those of children reported missing, as well as individuals yet to be identified. On January 23, 2000, the names Robert Falk, Mohammed Al-Abi, Terrence Bazarian, and Frank Monroe were added. Frank Monroe was pronounced missing in action, and to this day, has never been found. These winters are getting worse every year, that's for sure. The old cattle rancher doesn't know if it's the climate changing, God's judgment arriving, or if he's just getting older and struggling to keep up. Probably a strong mix of all of it. Whatever the cause, it doesn't change the facts. It's deathly cold out there. His ailing, elderly ma's health continues to deteriorate. He hasn't heard from his delivery driver Jorge in days, and on top of it all, his loyal dog Maribel is out there barking into the darkness of the barn. The rancher heads out to fetch her. He doesn't know what he'd do if she froze. He whistles, but she doesn't look back at him. She just carries on barking up that road into the snowy night. The rancher wades through the snow and peers in the direction she's looking.
There's nothing there, girl. Get inside.
But Maribel keeps barking. She's insisting. He looks again. Is that? The rancher takes off running up the road. All thoughts of cold immediately gone from his mind, he races towards the figure as fast as he can. His frozen fingers fumble at the zipper on his parka. Icy wind stabs the insides of his lungs. Maribel shoots off ahead of him. There, he pulls the zipper down and wrestles the thick coat off of his shoulders just as he reaches the tiny figure. He drops to his knees and throws the coat over the shoulders of the little girl standing alone in the snow. Quick as he can, he wraps it tightly around her, pulling the hood up and over her head. He takes her tiny shoulders in his hands and gives her a shake.
You okay? Hello? Can you hear me?
The girl sways for a moment, then collapses. He catches her, and in one deft motion, scoops her into his arms and takes off back down the road in the direction of his farm. Where the hell had she come from? There are no buildings around here for miles. No one uses that road except Jorge. And in this weather, she couldn't have walked all the way over those mountains. She'd have frozen solid. He bites the finger of a glove and pulls it off. With his bare hand, he clasps one of hers. By the feel of her skin, she pretty much is frozen solid already. He needs to get her warmed up, now. He kicks open the front door and bundles inside with a flurry of snowflakes and an anxious dog at his heels. The fire's not quite dead yet, so he rushes over to the hearth and lays the little girl down next to it. He can barely see her at all wrapped up in his enormous coat. She doesn't seem to be moving.
Ma, I'm home. I found someone.
The rancher grabs 2 dry logs from the side and throws them onto the fire. He piles kindling high on top of them and blows steadily into the embers at the bottom. They glow and swell in size. No taking yet. He blows again for longer, and again. He feels his head starting to swim. A crackle, a lick of flame. It's taken. Panting, he turns back to the bundled-up coat on the floor with the child inside. Still no movement. A sickening knot tightens his stomach. What if she's... No, don't let yourself think that. Not yet. He reaches down and gently undoes the zipper on the parka. His trembling fingers push back the hood. She's pale. Deathly pale. Her dark brown hair is wet and clings to her scalp. The tips are frozen. At a guess, she must only be 9 years old. Eyes closed, lips a sickening blue. But that's not the color that scares him the most. On her neck, there's red. Delicately as he can, the rancher takes the coat off her shoulders and hangs it up by the fire. She's dressed only in a plaid shirt, way too big for her. It looks like an adult's shirt, similar to an old one he used to have years ago. But on her neck, her hands, her feet, is that same deep red, layers of blood frozen to her skin. He sits back, his mind blank. He's seen that much blood before. Sure he has. When you work with cattle, it's an unfortunate part of the job. He's seen cows bleed out during childbirth. The girl in front of him, she's the same color as those orphaned calves that lie crying on the floor. A groaning sound fills the room. The rancher looks across at the armchair where his ma sits. She doesn't look at him, doesn't look at the girl on the floor. She just stares into the fire, same way she always does. Ma groans again, trying to express something she doesn't understand, being in a world without living in it.
Ma, it's okay. Sorry if I startled you. We have a guest with us.
But she just keeps on groaning and staring into the fire. The rancher buries his head in his hands and lets out a deep breath. Only the sound of his breath is joined by another, a tiny breath rattling and rasping through a damaged child's throat, trying its best to keep its host alive. The rancher opens his eyes and stares at the child. She isn't conscious, not by a long shot, but she's breathing, a little at a time. The icicles in her hair have turned into rounded droplets of water that glow by the heat of the fire. He snaps back to his senses. He's not doing her much if she's just lying there soaking wet. He runs off upstairs and grabs some towels and a fresh flannel shirt to wear. After several minutes of drying her off, he's confident enough that he's got most of the water off. There's still a lot of blood caked to her skin, but as far as he can tell, there's no wound anywhere that it could have come from. Brow furrowed, he leaves her under a bundle of blankets and fills up the kettle with water. Hanging it carefully over the fire, he walks over to the cabinet and fishes out a tin of cocoa from the top shelf. Hasn't been used in years, but should still be fine. He would make it with milk, but she's probably dehydrated. Lifting the kettle's lid with the poker, the rancher pours the brown powder inside and waits for it to boil. The little girl's eyes are open now. She's staring into the flames. Her lips are looking a little more pink, her skin a little more blotchy.
You're safe here. Just stay by the fire and warm up a bit. You like cocoa?
The little girl drags her eyes away from the flames. Her expression is mostly blank. She looks too tired to be confused.
I don't know.
I think you will. Ma always gave me cocoa.
Okay.
And with that, the farmhouse falls silent. The little girl stares into the fire. The rancher watches her, finally feeling the wave of exhaustion crashing over him. His ma has fallen asleep in her armchair. Only Maribel stays awake through the whole night, staying close to the little girl by the fire, occasionally licking her toes to try and warm them up. By the morning, the snow stopped, but the huge drifts remain. As the rancher walks across to the barn, he finds it hard to believe that just a few hours ago, the winds were whipping at his face as hard as they were. The world this morning is totally still. What the rancher finds even harder to believe is that there's a little girl in his house right now, fast asleep by the fire. He checked her forehead when he woke up this morning, and she miraculously hadn't caught a fever. She couldn't have been out in that weather for too long, but it only made the question more mysterious. Where did she come from? Maribel didn't get up this morning. From all of the excitement last night, she must have been too tired for today. Walking through the crisp morning air, he can't really blame her. He shoulders the barn door open. A column of steam curls out of the opening. All of that warmth, humidity, and cattle smell is strangely comforting this morning. But as the rancher goes around checking on all the cows inside, he very quickly discovers a problem. They're thin. Way too thin. Some of them look to be on the verge of starvation. He'd missed it last night as he drove them down in the dark, but in the warm glow of the barn's lights, it's unmistakable. These cows haven't been eating properly. He pours out several sacks of grain for them into the troughs, and they all gather around hungrily, filling both their stomachs as fast as they can. The rancher leans on the railing for a moment, confused. Even in this cold, there was still plenty of green grass for them up on the ridge. That's why he'd taken them up there. They should have had no trouble eating until the snow came in last night. He doesn't like this one bit. Last time Jorge had driven down and collected some of the meat, he'd had a few questions about the quantity being smaller than usual. Were the cows sick at all? Not that the rancher could tell. But now, looking at them, it's clear as day. Something's up.
You hungry?
The little girl nods. They sit across the table from one another, eating homemade bread and soup. Ma stays over by the fire. Maribel slowly wanders over to the kitchenette and flops down on the floor, exhausted.
Where are you from?
The girl shrugs her shoulders.
You know how you got out here? Remember anything from last night?
The little girl just eats her soup and shakes her head. She doesn't look particularly scared or worried. just a little confused. Where are your parents? Do you have parents? Again, the little girl shrugs. The rancher sits back and folds his arms. He's tried to call into town, but his phone line's gone out in the blizzard. Not much to be done until the snow clears. He's got a good relationship with the police around here. If he explains the situation, then it'll all be okay. What do you know? Can you remember anything from last night?
It was dark.
The girl slurps her soup.
I was hungry. So hungry. Then I saw the light and I went towards that.
My car?
No. Well, yes, later on it was your car, but before it wasn't.
What was the light then? Where were you?
I don't know. It was just the light.
Now he's even more confused, but try as he might, the rancher can't figure any of it out, and try as she might, the little girl can't remember anything more precise than that. The pair of them hop into the car and drive back out up the road that afternoon. The snow is piled so high that the rancher is having to get out twice as often as he did the previous night to clear a track for them. He isn't actually sure what he's brought her out here looking for. Clues, maybe? He almost laughs at himself at the thought, but that's probably the best word for it. If he can figure out how she got here, then he can work on understanding who she is and how to get her home. There's the damage to the phone line. One of the masts has collapsed, sagging heavily on the lines. That's not something he can fix on his own. No, sir. Looks like he'll have to wait for the snow to melt before making any phone calls again. That could be in 1 week. That could be in 3 months. He glances at the child sitting in the passenger seat. She's just staring out of the window in amazement, wrapped up in as many layers as he could put on her. They may be stuck together for a while. A lurch. The pickup plunges dangerously to the left. The rancher slams on the brakes and it comes to a stop just in time. A large chunk of snow in front of them comes loose and slips off the side of the road. It tumbles down into a gully that he hadn't even spotted. With all this snow on the ground, he has no frame of reference. Everything is just white. Stay here. The rancher opens the door and climbs out. He wishes Maribel was with him, but she'd wanted to stay home again. Poor dog. She must really be going through it if she wasn't even up for a ride in the pickup. Carefully as he can, testing every step before making it, the rancher creeps over to the edge of the gully. It's bigger than he thought, much bigger. It continues down, more and more sharply for a few hundred feet, all the way down into a... Oh no. There's a semi down there, a big rig, warped and bent, lying on the rocks. Just a glance is enough to tell the rancher it's Jorge's, but he just keeps staring at it in disbelief. Can't be. But it is. Stay in the car. The rancher reaches past the little girl and into the back seat. Grabbing a pair of crampons and some rope, he straightens up and looks at the girl. She knows it's serious. He can see the concern on her face. Stay in the car, he repeats. By the time the rancher makes it down to the truck, his legs and back are killing him. All this work over the last 24 hours is going to start taking its toll sooner or later, but some things have to be done. He pauses by the semi. It's on its side. He'll have to climb up onto it and try to open the door. Some things have to be done. He hoists himself up and manages to clamber onto the metal door. It's badly crumpled, and the window is smashed in. He doesn't fancy his chances of being able to get it open. One look through the window shows him that he won't want to do that anyway. Blood coats every inch of the inside of Jorge's truck. The cabin that the rancher is so used to seeing and sitting in is almost unrecognizable. Smashed glass is sprinkled across every surface with a dark brownish-red layer of gore frozen into everything else. There, in the midst of it all, still wearing a seatbelt, is Jorge's body. It dangles like a limp carcass at a butcher shop, like the cows he hangs in the slaughterhouse. And like those cows, a large chunk of Jorge is missing. His fat stomach is gone, not just cut open, but gone. The tops of his thighs, too, and much of his chest. So much of him is just missing. Open arteries and lifeless nerves dangle in place. That must have been a hell of a crash. The rancher reaches over and pulls Jorge's cap down over his eyes. Not much else to be done right now. No way he can clean this mess up by himself. But as the rancher climbs up the valley, his mind starts to connect some dots that leave a sick feeling in his stomach. He's seen that much blood somewhere else, or rather, on someone else, just last night. He slams the door to the pickup shut and starts to drive back down the track. Since the snow stopped, all of the drifts that he'd cleared earlier remain clear. It's only a few minutes' drive back down to the farm. He doesn't say a word the whole way, and neither does the little girl. She clearly senses something's up. The sick feeling in his stomach remains. He pulls up the handbrake, and the two of them sit in silence outside the farmhouse.
There's a truck in that valley. Did you know that?
Yes?
Is that where you came from last night?
I don't remember.
Was he... The rancher stops. Jorge didn't have any kids. What were you doing in his truck?
I don't know.
Was he...
The rancher can't bring himself to accuse his best friend of the words that almost left his mouth.
Do you think you might not remember because something bad happened to you?
I don't know.
The rancher closes his eyes for a long moment. Silence fills the pickup.
Come on, let's get inside.
But inside wasn't the safe haven he'd been hoping for. Ma's been throwing up, not just once, but a few times. She's distressed, groaning aimlessly for someone to come and save her. Maribel is pacing around the room, yelping and whining. The rancher immediately goes upstairs to get some rags to clean up with. Perfect timing, as usual. But he stops in his tracks when he comes back down. His ma's stopped moaning. The little girl is kneeling by the armchair, holding the old lady's hand. The room is calm. The little girl gently places the frail hand back on the armrest and comes over to take the rags from the rancher. Returning to the old lady, the girl goes about mopping her up as best she can. Maribel slumps back down on the floor. And that is how the four of them exist for the next few days. Ma gets sicker steadily, but the little girl stays by her side all day long, caring for her in every way. The rancher's glad of that. It gives him the time he needs to help his cows outside. None of them are in a good shape. Whatever it is, they're still getting thinner. He feeds them all the grain they'd normally need, and then some, and they always finish it off. Yet none of them are getting any fatter. The rancher leans on the railing, trusty dog by his side. His energy is starting to really lag behind what he needs. The last couple of days, even though he hasn't done all that much, have totally taken it out of him.
What do you think it is, Maribel?
He looks down at his little friend. She's looking thinner too, actually, but she's been eating just fine. It hits him. Tapeworms. As soon as the word comes into his head, it makes total sense. His cows, his entire herd by the looks of things, have been riddled with tapeworms.
Oh, hell.
He hasn't got anywhere near the amount of medicine needed to give some to all of them. Even if he did, a lot of them are looking pretty far gone. The chance of reinfection would be high. He needs supplies. He needs Jorge. Maribel whines softly next to him. He knows what they have to do. Laying Maribel down carefully by the fire, the rancher administers the tapeworm medicine. For a few hours, they lie there together. He strokes her side, waiting for her to pass it. The little girl watches over his shoulder. His ma sits back in her chair, mumbling to herself. He hasn't talked to the little girl anymore about Jorge yet. He isn't sure what there is to say. Maybe he should ask if Jorge was sick. After all, the cows clearly have had these tapeworms since before the other night. Jorge may have picked up contaminated meat from him last time he came. Maybe. Maribel passes the worm on the rug.
Ugh, the smell.
The rancher uses the tongs next to the fire to pick the worm up. It's long and pale. And dead. He tosses it into the fire and puts the tongs in the flames for a bit to sterilize them. The worm sizzles and pops in the flames. The sound makes his stomach crawl. The rancher glances around and sees the little girl staring at the tapeworm. He looks past the girl to his ma sitting in the chair. Her turn next. But as that night and the following morning reveal, it's too late. His ma's groans turn into cries of pain. She openly sobs by the fire, clutching at her stomach. Every time the rancher tries to give her the medicine, she just vomits it back up. Each time she vomits, there's more and more blood mixed in. The little girl gets more and more upset. It's not fair on her to have to witness something this traumatic and disgusting. There's nowhere else for her to go. She shouldn't even be here at all. The fact that she is means she has to help. That's all there is to it. By sunrise, his ma has passed away. There is nasty red bruising all across her abdomen, which tells him she must have bled out internally from this worm. He'd been too late to realize what was wrong. Too late with the cows, and too late with his ma. He covers his ma with a blanket and tells the little girl not to go and wash her hands. He needs to check on the cattle. Sure enough, during the night, a handful of them died too. The calves. They were the ones to go first whenever something like this happened. Mother cows stood over their calves, licking their heads, willing them to wake up. The rancher drags each body out to the back and burns them. He can't risk any more contamination. As the carcasses burn, he allows himself to cry. But when the rancher comes back into the house, it's full of noise, a noise that takes his brain a long time to comprehend. Crying, but not his own, not the little girl either. No, it was a new sound. It was a baby. A newborn child screaming at the top of its lungs. The rancher can't believe what he's looking at. The little girl is sitting at the hearth with Maribel at her feet. In her arms, drenched in blood, is a baby. The girl looks up at him and smiles sweetly.
It's a boy.
Then she turns around to his ma's body under the blanket. A sickening red patch soaks through the fabric, right over where her stomach would be. What the hell happened here?
I've got a little brother.
Securing and containing SCP-1003 has proven challenging. This is largely because the tapeworm that causes all of this damage is virtually indistinguishable from Echinococcus granulosus, the common variety of tapeworm that causes hydatid disease. The tapeworm, designated SCP-1003-1, follows the same life cycle as other regular worms. Its eggs come into contact with an animal through contaminated meat, saliva, or unclean surfaces and are ingested. Once inside the gut, they grow and latch onto the inside of the digestive tract, where they feed on the nutrients of the food traveling past them, steadily growing bigger and stronger. Once mature, they lay eggs, which pass out in the animal's excrement to continue the process. Infections spread quickly, particularly in unsanitary conditions amongst livestock, and can often be difficult to contain, as by the time the symptoms, nausea, weight loss, fever, start to manifest in the infected, the worms have likely already reproduced and have a new generation growing in the guts of other animals. As far as the Foundation is aware, SCP-1003 follows this normal pattern in all observed animals except humans. When a human ingests an egg from this tapeworm, a very different creature starts to grow in their gut. Human embryos, with the same genetic code as the tapeworm, begin to form. The rate of their growth is greatly accelerated, however. By just 8 weeks, they are as mature as the typical 3-week-old neonate or newborn child, although similar in size to an 8-week-old embryo at 13 to 16 centimeters. Many eggs usually enter this fertilization period, but almost all of them die before having a chance to develop much beyond the early stages. They stand the best chance of survival when buried in the hepatic tissue, where they can absorb plenty of nutrients from their host. The host at this point usually starts to experience mild symptoms, lethargy, the occasional stomach cramp, nothing particularly severe. Yet, the embryos that survive soon develop rows of temporary, razor-sharp teeth. At this point, passively absorbing nutrients is no longer enough for them. They bury their teeth into the soft tissue surrounding them and begin to eat. Once they enter this stage, their rate of growth increases exponentially the more flesh they consume. Eventually burrowing out into the world, the tapeworm child is born drenched in blood. The size and apparent age of the child that emerges from the corpse are determined by the size of the person they consume. For example, the child eating its way out of the rancher's maw appeared to be only a 10-month-old child, as there was very little of the frail old woman for it to eat. By contrast, the little girl who emerged from Orhe's gut had plenty of fat to feast on, and so was able to grow to the size of a 9-year-old. Once the child emerges, the teeth that they'd used to eat their way out quickly become loose and are replaced by regular human teeth. The children themselves have no memory at all of where they've come from or what they are. They have the same motor and linguistic skills that a regular child would possess at their age. Nothing, aside from their DNA, marks them out as being any different from the children around them, blissfully ignorant, just like the children around them. It is theorized that many of these children end up in orphanages. With no birth certificates or identifiable parents, they fall through the gaps in the system, quickly lost to the world. The only way to really track them at all is to follow the infections they cause. You see, these tapeworm children have one final curse they must live with. Their bodily fluids, their saliva, and sweat contain the same tapeworm protoscolex that will develop into SCP-1003-1 as soon as it is ingested by another creature, making the cycle start all over again. If you want to track down a tapeworm child, and I highly advise that you don't, all you have to do is follow the trail of nasty stomach infections, internal bleeding, and freak pregnancies amongst the outcasts of society. It, unfortunately, will not take long. There are currently 10 instances of SCP-1003-2 in containment. The children live in Bioresearch Area 13 under strict supervision. Researchers are only permitted to enter their cells whilst wearing full-body biohazard suits, but first must have Level 4 security clearance and must have written permission, and can only enter with specific research goals agreed upon. All staff are regularly tested for the presence of any kind of tapeworms in their system. No other animals are permitted in this facility.
It's never a nice feeling waking up lying amongst shards of broken glass in the middle of the road. The dawn sky above the biker looks almost peaceful. It's as if nothing had gone wrong at all, as if everything is right in the world. But slowly, the throbbing pain washes into his helmeted head, and the sound of the traffic surrounding him rises in his ears. A sea of onlookers gathers around as the cars blast their horns. Through the cracked visor of his helmet, the biker can see concerned faces, people calling emergency services, and a few women crying. His paramedic bike is toppled on its side about 40 feet from him. There are long black tire marks running up to where it lies, smoking slightly on its side. With a groan, the biker sits himself up and shakes his head. Bad idea. Looking around, though, it seems he's the only one injured. His bike had gone into the front of a car at the junction. The occupants of the car stand by nervously, offering him whatever little assistance they can. But there's no time for that, the biker suddenly realizes. He looks down at his watch frantically. It's 12:03 p.m. There's not enough time. He rushes over to the bike as fast as he can and lifts it back upright. A couple of onlookers try to grab his arms, trying to sit down to rest, but he can't. There's no time. He has just 3 minutes to get to St. Mary's Hospital in central London. Right now, he's at the junction outside Baker Street Station. He can still make it on time if he gets on his bike and goes now. The biker swings his leg onto the bike and kicks it into life. He takes a deep gulp and looks over his shoulder at the box on the back of his bike. He can't risk opening it here. The damage may already be done. But if the heart is still alive in that box, it is the only chance that a 10-year-old boy has for a normal life. If he doesn't get to the hospital in the next 3 minutes, his life could be over. The school children stand in a circle, looking down at the dead bird with a morbid fascination.
Do you think it's alive? No way.
The boy in the middle of the group goes to pick up a stick. With an air of false confidence, he walks up to the bird and gives it a prod. It makes a squelching noise. The other kids all reel in shock, making retching noises and laughing about it. It's only when their teacher comes out to call them inside that the group disperses, leaving the animal carcass alone, sitting at the edge of the playground, outside the view of boring adults. Each passing day, the kids wander over to the bird's body. It's kind of the best biology lesson they've ever had as they watch the animal slowly decompose. At first, its body just shrinks, goes flat almost. The feathers start falling out, and it loses all of its color. Then it starts to get puffy. Different parts of its flesh bulge out in weird places, as if they're being inflated like a balloon animal at someone's birthday party. But then, the maggots come. There are only a couple of tiny white crawling wrigglers in the bird's body at first, but a couple of days after that, it's infested with them. The creepy crawlies wriggle all over the body. But as the boy looks down at the dead bird, he spots something very peculiar, something they haven't seen in a biology class before. There's a red maggot, wriggling and crawling in amongst the rest of the creepy crawlies. It squirms like the rest of them, but even over the course of the school day, it quickly grows larger than any of the others.
What do you think it is?
The boy stares at it.
It looks like a worm.
And a worm is exactly what it was. The next day, when the kids return, they see that the red maggot is now much larger than any of the others feasting on the bird. With a slightly translucent body, cherry red coloring, and small white speckles on its skin, it looks unlike anything they've ever seen before. Actually, not unlike anything they've ever seen before. It looks exactly like something that all the kids recognize very well. In fact, one of the kids has a bag of them right now that he's chewing on. A candied worm. The kids stare in curiosity, first at the bag of candy that their friend has in his hand, and then down at the worm, slowly eating its way through the decomposing bird. As far as their eyes can tell, the two things are exactly the same. Except, of course, that the one eating the bird seems to be alive. Kids being kids, the next thing that happened was sort of inevitable. One dares the boy to eat it. He almost retches in disgust. There's no way he's even touching it. And then, another one of the children throws down the poison chalice and dares him. The boy stands there nervously. He knows that he's not allowed to eat worms. That had been a lesson ingrained in him from a very young age. But his mother isn't here right now, and this thing doesn't look like any kind of worm that he's seen before. It almost looks a bit tasty. In exchange for eating the worm, another one of the children promises he'll give him 5 English pounds. The kids around the circle gasp. That's a lot of money. None of them have even got 2 pounds on them, let alone 5. Think of all the sweets you could buy with that kind of money. But the boy is adamant. He puffs his chest out, he stands up tall, and he nods firmly. 5 pounds, or he wouldn't do it. After some intense schoolyard debate, the deal is sealed. As the boy lies in bed that night, staring at the ceiling and grumbling, he knows that he is not happy about what his friends have done to him today. He's going to get them back for this. Only he's getting a bit of a tummy ache. Getting is the wrong word. He's had a tummy ache for most of the evening. What he's experiencing now is heartburn. It feels as if something is crawling in his chest. The boy just ignores it. It's probably just his worries about the worm inside of him. He chewed it up pretty well. There's no way that it's still alive in him, surely. His uneasy sleep is punctuated by rotten dreams. Dreams in which he finds himself lying on the floor and his playground lying on the ground at school, unable to move as people gather around him to poke him with a stick. He feels his skin covered with maggots. They even crawl across the surface of his eyes. In his chest, there's a searing pain. The boy wakes with a start as he feels his heart pounding, thudding against his ribs. It's agonizing. Adrenaline courses through him as he sweats off his face. Crying out for his mom, the boy lies there in bed, feeling the heart attacking his system. When you decide to become a surgeon, you have to accept that you're not going to get very much sleep most nights. In fact, it's more than that. You have to not only accept that you won't get much sleep most nights, but you also have to be at your absolute best when you've had no sleep and it's the middle of the night. With over 40 years under his belt, the surgeon doesn't need coffee anymore, even when the junior doctor offers it to him as he strides toward the operating theater. Instead, he asks them to fill him in on the situation. Who's his patient? What's going on? What needs to be done? The doctor accompanying him reads the notes in a calm but hurried voice. They haven't got much time on this one at all. At any moment, the boy's heart could give out. The surgeon asks what's wrong with the organ, and the doctor looks at his notes in apparent confusion. Apparently, over the course of the night, the boy has suffered a 72% reduction in the mass of his heart. The surgeon stops just on the other side of the door. He doesn't want to have this conversation in front of his whole team. He whispers to the doctor in a terse voice,
What kind of infection does this boy have that his heart has undergone that rapid of a deterioration? It's not an infection at all, sir. Well, sir, it's a worm.
The doctor holds out a sheet to him. The surgeon takes it from him. He looks down at the x-ray to see a scan of the boy's chest cavity. It doesn't look so bad. There's a hole in the heart for sure, but the surgeon has encountered worse in his career.
This was taken when the boy was first admitted.
The doctor hands the surgeon a second x-ray.
And this was taken just 1 hour later.
It is barely recognizable as a human heart. There seems to be a mass growing in the cavity that was left by the heart, and there, infecting all of the boy's organs, was the shape of a worm. The biker weaves his way through the traffic down on Marylebone Road, eyes darting frantically in all directions. He may have a concussion, and he may not be allowed to drive at all right now. In fact, he knows he definitely isn't. But he is under strict instructions. This heart needs to get to St. Mary's Hospital before it's too late. The bike careens around the corner and skids to a halt outside the emergency doors. An ambulance team in front of him is trying to help an old lady out of the back of their vehicle, but the biker doesn't have time for them. He grabs the organ box from the back of the bike and races into the building. It takes all of his remaining concentration to navigate through the maze of hospital corridors on his way to the operating theater. On a better day, he'd be able to do this with no problem, but with his head injury, he can see the lights starting to blur all around him. Ward 6, Ward 7, Ward 7A, Ward 7B. He runs as fast as his heavy boots will allow him, feeling that energy draining from his system. He can't look at his watch. He can't check the time. He just has to find this boy. Operating theater, there, right up ahead of him, just a couple of 100 feet. There's a doctor waiting outside the door who looks up at the sound of his footsteps. The biker rips his helmet off and holds out the box with the heart in it, panting heavily. It's the moment of truth. Is he too late? The doctor looks shell-shocked, not at the biker's arrival, but clearly at something else she's just seen. The man starts to explain, but runs out of words, and instead beckons the biker to follow him into the observation room. There, the two of them stand looking through the glass at the little boy lying on the operating table with the surgeon standing over him. There's something in the air. The biker sniffs, confused.
Can anyone else smell sugar?
Next time you open a packet of candied worms, take a second to look through the little creepy crawlies in the bag. Perhaps poke a couple of them, just to see if any of them are moving. You can never be too careful. If you had told the parents of that young boy on the night when their son woke up with heart palpitations, telling stories of eating a worm at school, that the only health concerns he would have going forward were mild diabetes and a slightly raised level of blood sugar, I'm sure they would have been thrilled to hear it. You see, SCP-839, commonly referred to within the Foundation as candied worms, is much scarier on the surface than it is underneath. Not only does this SCP resemble your usual candy worm, but its body is actually composed of sugar flavorings and colorings, roughly equivalent to what you would find in most convenience store candy aisles. Each instance even has a small raised bit of writing near the tail specifying which flavor it is. While the origins of these worms are yet to be determined, cases have sprung up across much of the Western world, with higher numbers reported in areas with higher levels of diabetes. There seems to be a parallel between high-sugar diets and the presence of SCP-839. Whether they are of man-made or other origins is yet to be determined. That is not to say that SCP-839 cannot survive outside of human populations. This SCP in the wild primarily feeds on decomposing organic matter and is capable of sustaining itself on a purely vegetarian diet. However, when ingested into the human body, SCP-839 will target specific organs and burrow its way towards them. The organ in question depends on which color candied worm the SCP instance is. For example, the red cherry-flavored candied worms will burrow towards the heart and consume that, while the blue raspberry ones will instead feed on the human's kidney. One would expect the health consequences of this feeding to be severe. However, as the SCP feeds, it will also change its own shape and chemical composition until the worm itself becomes a substitute organ for the one that it is consuming. However, this substitute organ is not a perfect replacement, as other health consequences are derived from its presence. For example, the green apple-flavored SCP-839-3 targets the eye and replaces it with a jelly-green version of the human eye. While this eye is mostly capable of sight, subjects have reported mild hallucinations and blurriness of vision, as well as a greenish tint to how they see the world. Fortunately for the Foundation, SCP-839 reproduces sexually, meaning that individual instances require a partner in order to have offspring. This has made containment of this SCP much more feasible. Though they are a relatively low-priority entity in the broader scope of the Foundation, there are no known cases as of yet of any SCP-839 infections leading to death or serious chronic illness. Therefore, any instances that are captured by the Foundation are sent to storage site 839-1, where they are kept in a glass housing and regularly fed a diet of plant matter each day. Here, their reproductive activity can be closely monitored and controlled based on what research is needed. Those infected with SCP-839 instances can continue to live long and healthy lives, with only minor health complications arising. Therefore, the Foundation is comfortable allowing a reasonable number of cases to go unexamined in the world. So, like I said, for next time you open up a bag of candied worms, maybe just give them a quick poke. You could be saving yourself a trip to the hospital and a lifetime dependence on insulin.
2 recreational divers are swimming along the seafloor nearly 100 feet below the surface. This husband and wife duo are no strangers to scuba diving, and they move effortlessly through the water as they marvel at the various fish and plant life that normally remain unseen by humans. The woman taps her husband on the shoulder and points in the direction of a forest of kelp before starting to swim towards it. The man is about to follow when he sees something out of the corner of his eye. He stops and turns to get a better look. A few dozen meters away is a group of people. The man is confused. He looks back towards his wife, who is motioning for him to follow her. He raises a single finger as if to say, "I'll be with you in a minute," and starts to swim in the direction of the strange crowd of people standing on the seafloor. He still can't make out exactly what he's looking at. A light current is causing silt to kick up and hang in the air, obscuring his view. As he gets closer, though, everything becomes clear. It really is a group of people, standing perfectly still, 30 meters underwater. But they aren't living people, of course. They are statues. The man can see now that these are statues of children. They are standing in a circle, facing outwards, and each one is holding hands with the statues next to them, forming an unbroken ring. He swims closer to get a better look. The statues are covered in algae and other plant life. He doesn't know who or why someone would make this strange art piece, but whatever their reasons, it looks like it's been down here a long time. He swims around the circle and counts more than 20 in total, with each one looking to be unique. While the center of the circle of statues is empty, there's pieces of bricks and concrete scattered all around it. There used to be something down here, a building or some kind of structure that once housed the statues and has now collapsed. It seems impossible that anything could have ever been built down here. He looks back in the direction of his wife, but he can't see her. She must be somewhere along the kelp investigating her own mysteries. He's about to head in her direction when he notices something. The inside of the circle isn't empty. Something is inside, sticking out of the sand. He swims up above the ring to get a better look. There's definitely something buried in the circle of statues. He can see now that it is the corner of what looks to be a metal box. He swims down closer to the box and reaches a hand out towards it, when he suddenly stops and looks up. The woman swims out of the dense kelp forest carrying a brightly colored shell. She can't wait to show her husband how beautiful it is. She looks around, but there's no sign of him. She looks in the direction that he swam and spots the same strange group of people that he did. As she swims towards them, she also quickly realizes that these are just statues. Very odd ones, but statues nonetheless. She also notices the rubble that surrounds them. The broken chunks of concrete, bricks, some bones. Wait, bones? That's when she spots something else lying on the ocean floor just outside the ring of statues. It's her husband's scuba tank, with his shattered mask resting on top.
Hi, I'm Dr. Bob, and this is SCP-1451, also known as Sunken Children's Perimeter.
SCP-1451 is the designation that has been given to an anomalous set of metal statues that possess very strange and deadly properties. The 26 statues, each of which is unique and have been given the designations SCP-1451-1 through 26, all resemble human children and range in height from 1.32 to 1.43 meters. They are located within an ocean inlet on the seafloor and are arranged in a circle facing outwards, with each holding hands with the ones next to it, forming an unbroken ring. These statues are anything but stationary, though, at least some of the time, and in fact, they have 3 distinct stages of motion, which the SCP Foundation refers to as Class 1 through 3 scenarios. The first, a Class 1 scenario, is the designation given when no movement is detected at all. This is the state that the statues appear to spend the majority of their time in. The designation will change to Class 2 when some slight movement of the statues is detected. In this state, they can be seen to slowly raise and lower their hands, while also subtly moving together in a counterclockwise direction. Bubbles have been observed coming from the statues' mouths during this scenario. SCP-1451 will be seen to behave this way when a large object comes near it, and it will often mean that the statues are preparing to transition into a Class 3 scenario. A Class 3 scenario will be triggered when a solid object that weighs more than 40 grams enters the center of the circle. When the object, whether it be a living one or not, enters this activation area, the statues will fully animate and turn their attention on the object with only one purpose: to destroy it. When the statues enter a Class 3 scenario, they exhibit incredible strength and agility. They appear to possess at least a rudimentary form of intelligence as well, as they have been seen utilizing teamwork and advanced tactics. Once the statues have been activated, they are relentless in the pursuit of their targets, stopping at nothing to neutralize them. Should you manage to make it out of the activation area, the statues will still continue to give chase, and in one case, they followed a target over a kilometer before finally overtaking it. Once they get their hands on a target, death and destruction are all but assured. They will rip and tear anything that enters their circle apart, be it man or machine, with their metallic hands. Once they have eliminated the object, the statues will then return to their Class 1 scenario position. Attempts to intercept the statues as they return to their activation area will lead to what the Foundation has dubbed a Class 3.5 scenario, during which they will destroy anyone or anything that tries to intervene or prevent them from reaching their destination. While SCP-1451 might seem to be one of the simpler anomalies in the SCP Foundation database, there may just be more to this story than first meets the eye. And in fact, the Sunken Children's Perimeter may not even be the first anomaly that was contained here. Those with Foundation Overseer level clearance have access to some rather interesting documents that help to fill in just what SCP-1451 might really be, and more importantly, what they're protecting. The documents include a manifest of the materials that were initially recovered from the area where SCP-1451 was discovered. These materials included roughly 20 kilograms of bricks, 4,000 kilograms of containment-grade concrete, the type normally used in SCP Foundation sites, and most interesting of all, a damaged Scranton box. For those unaware, Scranton boxes were the precursors to Dr. Scranton's much better-known reality anchors. These powerful devices are used to contain reality warping anomalies and prevent them from bending the fabric of our universe to their whims. Dr. Scranton's initial research into the technology produced an early version that was used in the containment of anomalies, though we now know that the technology was flawed and could lead to failures in containment. In the case of SCP-1451, a document was partially recovered from the Scranton box that alludes to just such a failure. In this instance, a powerful Euclid-class reality warper was being held at Area 56, a location that the Foundation has no record of ever having existed. The corrupted file seems to suggest that the reality warping SCP's primary anomalous attribute was that things it believed to be real would become real. If it misconceived reality in any way, its anomalous abilities would force that misconception to become actual reality. For example, after the anomalous entity referred to an agent assigned to its containment as a child, the agent was at risk of undergoing various physical and mental changes to truly become a child. It appears that the anomaly may have begun conflating various aspects of its containment, mixing up the concepts of containment itself. The metal of its cage, the concrete of its cell, the child agent involved with its containment, the SCP Foundation itself, they all became entangled within the reality warping anomaly's mind and appear to have been jumbled together in such a way that led to the creation of SCP-1451, a group of metal children who are eternally on guard and destroy anything that tries to breach their perimeter. Just what happened to Area 56, the personnel who were stationed there, or the powerful reality warping anomaly they contained, continues to be a mystery. SCP-1451 has been classified as Euclid and is considered to be effectively contained at its current location. A sphere of wire mesh netting has been erected around it in order to ensure that no objects enter its activation area, but in the event that an object does manage to enter the circle, the statues are to be remotely monitored, and no attempts whatsoever are to be made to try and rescue the person or object that triggered the Class 3 scenario. Now go and watch another entry from the files of DrBob, like SCP-4975, Time's Up, for another anomaly that is relentless in the pursuit of its targets. And make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single anomaly as we delve further and further into the SCP Foundation's classified archives.